White. Wide open, Torrence! Oh, baby! Touchdown! How do you leave the best receiver in the NAIA that wide open?
You show, and that's what we do! Cat!
You're proud of me?
And it's caught! Oh my goodness! Troy Torrence comes down with it!
Welcome all to Season 2, the premiere episode of Bankroll Blitz, the Futures episode. It's so great to see all these cappers in the chat. It's so great to look across and see my guy, Troy Torrence. Troy, how are you, my friend? NFL is back. We are 9 days away from the first Thursday nighter of the season.
It's a great feeling. I'm not even going to lie. It's funny that I was so locked in the MLB season towards the end here that it was hard to dive into the NFL because I was just on this I had to build on the hot streak I was on. And then once I dug under the hood, once I peeled back one layer, I literally 12 hours straight just fucking took off and made sure I was ready for this season. I mean, I'm excited to try to repeat what we did last season and, dude, work with the team. So looking forward to it.
Well, it's what you did last season. I did not have a good season. You had a spectacular season. Official picks here on Bankroll Blitz. Troy Torrence went 221 wins, 205 losses, 51.9%, with an average line of plus 131. An average line of plus 131, and he goes 51.9%, up 38.97 units, and ROI plus 9.15%. That is a lot to live up to, and I'm excited to watch you do it. I am now in the black in CFL on the season. I've been hammering CFL, a sport very near and dear to my heart. I feel ready to go. I feel like it's week 8 of the NFL season. CFL has helped me lock in for gridiron angles and moves, and I'm just so excited to be here with everybody. We got WT, Ron Crawford, Zoe Fay, now a PSR Gold member. Thank you, Zoe, my guy. Al Cervic, Jarek White, Gerald Jones ready to go. Birdie into the house. It is so great to see all of you guys, and we have a lot of work to do here. We have a lot of work. So we're going to go through all 32 teams here, go over the futures market, and talk about our expectations of them. My futures were bad last year. And also, we didn't do this episode last year. We started on week 1. And I have not made a single future bet in NFL yet. Not made one. So everything's going to be worked out here. Troy, I know you've attacked week 1. You've made lots of bets in week 1. And I wonder what you've done in the future market. And you've tweeted them out, a lot of them, and made them official. What do you want to talk about for action-wise that you've already locked in before we start breaking down all these teams?
I feel skeptical or reluctant to give out anything with futures just because I've been so unsuccessful betting futures, as most people probably are. I mean, it's just a tough market to try to beat. But it's fun, right? It's fun. It's good to talk about and to cap it because it gives you an expectation. It gives you like a baseline to work with. But in terms of actually betting it with an intention to make money, 5 cents on the dollar is what we're trying to target. And I don't think it's really there. But I do have some futures action I brought to the show.
Well, I'm looking forward to talk it all. D. Jenkins in the house. We got saturated. He's got a big old bet on Bears over 8.5 wins. Slatsy says it's time. 3 futures bets. Chargers alternate wins under 8.5 plus 125. Dak Prescott over 29.5 touchdown passes. And Dalton Kincaid to get 1,000 receiving yards at plus 225. Well, without further ado, I would like to begin this season by thanking our producer. Jose Bouquet works tirelessly creating graphics and just trying to make our shows look great. So thank you, Jose. You are a big part of this team. Although not on camera, you are a huge part of this team. So thank you for all your hard work, Jose. Looking forward to season 2 of Bankroll Blitz with you as our producer. Great to see all of you guys in the chat. Let's get to work. We start with the AFC and the AFC East, the Buffalo Bills. Last year went 11-6 on the season. Right now, Super Bowl odds are 12-1. To win the AFC, 7-1. To win the AFC East, plus 170. To make the playoffs, minus 170. And their wins right now total is at 9.5. Now that 9.5 heavily juiced to the over at minus 150, but that feels suspiciously low. Josh Allen MVP 8-1. The Bills have won 4 straight AFC East crowns, 3 of the last 4 years. They'd be knocked out by the big bad Kansas City Chiefs. Sean McDermott's Bills welcome a new offensive coordinator in Joe Brady, a new defensive coordinator in Bobby Babich. This offense is consistently in the top 5 of the NFL, but it's a very different group. No Stephon Diggs, WR1 gone, WR2 Gabe Davis gone. In comes Curtis Samuel, second-round pick Keon Coleman, and they're hoping for a breakthrough season from third-year pro Khalil Shakir. Curtis Samuel is dealing with turf toe right now. We don't know if now McDermott is optimistic that he'll be there in week 1. Marquez Valdez-Scantling has a neck injury. McDermott thinks that they will both play in week 1. And we have the aforementioned Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid has been moved on by our man Slatsy to go for 1,000 yards at plus 225. He set the franchise records for most catches and receiving yards by a tight end as a rookie. 73 catches, 673 yards. James Cook was spectacular. I don't know why I had such low expectations for him. 237 carries for 1,122 yards and 2 touchdowns. Caught 44 passes for 445 yards and was durable. Played in every single game. Defensively, Babbich's squad had to immediately deal with the loss of star linebacker Matt Milano. God, just can't stay healthy, can't stay on the field. Torn biceps, undergo surgery. We hope he returns late in the 2024 season. That puts even more pressure on Terrell Bernard. Gone is that great safety duo of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. So can Mike Edwards, Taylor Rapp, and second-round pick Cole Bishop do that job? Cornerback Tre'Davious White gone. Leading sacker, Leonard Floyd gone. The Bills desperately need something from Von Miller. I'll be surprised if they get any production from him. They got 0 last year. And we may be asking for too much from Greg Rousseau and AJ Epinesa. Is this front 7 not strong enough? Does this defense take a step backwards? How does it not? Troy Torrence, take it away, the Buffalo Bills.
You finished that kind of where I would probably want to start this team is looking at the defensive line, because like you said, I think this is not going to be a defensive Buffalo Bills that we've seen in the past. Losing some of those big pieces. Some of these guys are getting older, a little bit washed up. What are we going to get out of Von Miller? I think, PFF got this D-line at 16th, but I don't think there's any depth. I don't think that this is the right group of guys to get it done. They have no, basically all of this team's run defensive grades last year, no matter how you want to look at it, run block win rate, yards per attempt, any way you want to look at it, they were bottom 10% in the league. That means they were 29th or lower in the league. And now with the new look defense, when you got a defensive line that can't do their job in the run fit, what happens to the linebackers, especially 2 linebackers of their stature? They're the smallest linebackers in the NFL. So you can imagine what a defensive line getting pushed back into your face is. How's that going to work for this Bills defense? I'm really concerned about their defense, to be honest. I do think their offense is probably in pretty good hands. I was impressed with Joe Brady last year. After Dorsey got fired, because here's what I kept talking about last season towards right before they fired their OC is they have to increase their presence in the run game, and they weren't doing any of that. They were very unbalanced. I think Joe Brady brought balance to this team. But the defense isn't built like that anymore. So they definitely have to change their approach completely to offense. This is going to be a completely new Bills team. I think there's going to be a lot of value in their games, especially, I'm looking towards week 1. And I don't know how much you'd want to get into it, but we see this steam towards the Cardinals with the Bills at home. And there's all types of teasers and money line parlays with this Bills team already. So, yeah, I'm not very high on this team. And I really think there's going to be value on this team this year, whether it's on them or against them. But we just got to let it play out, I think, early on.
That value will arise if they get off to a tough start.
Yeah, I think so, too. Oh, we should see a lot more 12 personnel. Slatsy, that's the best future I've seen so far. Dalton Kincaid, 1,000 yards plus. Maybe it's Dalton Kincaid to lead the team in receiving. Some way to bet Dalton Kincaid, I think, is a brilliant approach. And I think Shakir would be basically the number 2 in this situation. He reminds me of Wes Welker. I like this. I think they'll end up making things work out, but I still this defense, who are they going to be? And I'm very concerned about them being able to stop the run.
Overs will be in play in Bills games if the defense is not up to snuff, because we know the offense with Josh Allen will deliver. 9.5, suspiciously low. Nice to see Jacqueline in the house. Birdie, great to see you guys rolling with us. Let's roll on to the Miami Dolphins. Also 11-6 last season, 25-1 to win the Super Bowl, 10-1 to win the AFC, plus 200 to win the division, and to get over 9.5 wins, minus 130. Under is plus 100 to make the playoffs, minus 150. Tyreek Hill to be the offensive player of the year, plus 650. And Chop Robinson, defensive rookie of the year out of Penn State, is 16-1. This is year 3 for Mike McDaniel, and he must deliver. Dolphins have had 4 straight winning seasons. They've made the playoffs in 2 straight years. They're a team on the rise, but they have not won a playoff game since the year 2000. Tua made it through a full season healthy, threw for 4,624 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. His offensive line was littered with injuries last year. Tron Armstead returns and comes into the season healthy. Austin Jackson earned a contract extension, but they lost right guard Robert Hunt in free agency and brought in Aaron Brewer from the Titans. A 3rd consecutive season with McDaniel calling the plays, offensive coordinator Frank Smith, and quarterbacks coach Darrell Bevel. 3 consecutive years with that trio. Tyreek Hill led the league with 1,799 receiving yards. Jalen Waddle caught 72 passes for 1,014 yards. His 3rd straight 1,000-yard campaign to start his career. The oft-injured Odell Beckham Jr. comes to Miami. He may not be ready to start the season due to injury. He's 5 years removed from a 1,000-yard season, 8 years removed from a Pro Bowl season. I was shocked when the Ravens signed him last year and paid him a good chunk of money. And I don't think he's going to be available when push comes to shove for these Dolphins. I have very low expectations of his ability to deliver over a 17-game season. Tight end Jonnu Smith comes over from Atlanta Falcons, offers another red zone threat. Raheem Mostert and Achane return. Devon Achane, that is a very, very dangerous duo. Vic Fangio is gone as defensive coordinator. In comes new defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver. Comes over from a successful stint as a defensive line coach with the Ravens. They hired former Packers defensive coordinator Joe Barry as linebacker coach. The big question is, how will Bradley Chubb return from his ACL injury, and how will Jalen Phillips return from his Achilles injury, and when will all of this take place? They also lose Christian Wilkins to the Raiders. So, yes, they have an elite cornerback in Jalen Ramsey. They bring in veteran Shaquille Barrett. They use a first-round pick on Penn State Chop Robinson, depth on the edge. Miami released 2 longtime defenders that we know very well. Cornerback Xavier Howard and inside linebacker Jerome Baker. There was cap relief issues. They are replaced with Kendall Fuller at cornerback opposite Ramsey and Jordan Brooks at linebacker next to David Long Jr. And Jordan Poyer joins the club from the Buffalo Bills and could be an enormous addition. Troy Torrence, the Miami Dolphins.
There's one thing I think of when I think of this Dolphins team, and it just sticks in my head after watching that damn playoff game against the Chiefs last season. They can't win in the cold. So there's ultimately a ceiling over this team and what we could expect out of this team. Not only can they not win in the cold and they look terrible, they look like a completely different football team, but they can't beat teams with good records. Someone in the chat's got to have the record for the Miami Dolphins against good football teams. I don't know if they've ever won a game versus a good football team, meaning above 500. I know it's a really bad number. I don't have it offhand, but you look at this offense, we know what to expect. McDaniel, paired with Tua is a great tandem. I'm not so much worried about the offensive line, even though you could draw up some concerns there, because when you have a quick release, when you have RPO, when you have the offense that they do, and playing with anticipation, I don't think that we should worry that much about offensive lines. That goes for all the good coaches in the league. We've seen it last year with the Rams. We've seen it last year with the 49ers. We'll probably see it again this year with the 49ers. Looking at this defense, they set, Anthony Weaver's their defensive coordinator. I couldn't think of, and I plan on doing more research. I have a note here to look into when the last when was the last successful defensive coordinator also a defensive lineman in his career? I just think there's a lack of perception when you're a defensive lineman and you become a defensive coordinator. Now, maybe you can put it together. I just see a little bit of a bridge that still needs to be crossed, and I don't know if he's the right guy. Obviously, the defensive backfield is incredible. The defensive line is one of the worst in the NFL at this point. They lost all their good players, or the good ones are coming off injury. No more Fangio. I think this team is due for some regression. I think they've kind of been exposed and might be caught with their pants down with the tide going out. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of this Dolphins team. I would not be looking for them in the futures market.
The Miami Dolphins, 11-6 last year, and are plus 200 to win the division. Let's move on to the New York Jets. 7-10 last season, Super Bowl 20-1, AFC 10-1, division plus 180. Now, at some books, they are the favorite to win the division. Not here, but at some books, they are the favorite to make the playoffs minus 170. Aaron Rodgers to be the comeback player of the year plus 175. Aaron Rodgers to be the MVP plus 2,000. And Robert Saleh to be coach of the year at plus 1,200. It's been 14 long years since the Jets have made the playoffs. Pitting all your hopes on a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers returning from a torn Achilles tendon sounds suspect. Hoping 33-year-olds Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses can protect them over a 17-game season is also very questionable. Now, Elijah Vera Tucker, he's very talented, but he can't stay healthy. What are the chances of all three of them being healthy for the Jets' first playoff game since 2010? Minimal. They did draft Fashanu, 11th overall, to help protect Rodgers. John Simpson comes over from the Ravens. Rodgers has weapons. I mean, Garrett Wilson is an elite receiver. Mike Williams is WR2. If he can stay healthy, we know what he can do. Xavier Gibson is WR3. Third-round pick out of Western Kentucky, Malachi Corley adds depth. With defenses concerned about being beaten by Rodgers through the air, Breece Hall should have plenty of opportunities to put up big numbers. He's backed up by fourth-round pick Wisconsin Badger Braylon Allen. A Pro Football Focus rated this Jets defense as the best in the league last season, and they should be excellent again. Now Hassan Reddick is on day 36 of his holdout. He's incurred over $1.75 million in fines, but they have a monster in Quinnen Williams. If Reddick holds out, can last year's 15th overall pick Will McDonald handle a much bigger role? They look extremely strong at cornerback with Sauce Gardner, all-world Sauce Gardner, alongside DJ Reed. This is a very polarizing football team, Troy. Take it away, the New York Jets.
That's a good term to use for them. And it's funny, when I did all of these, when I started breaking down each team and building the profile for each team, I always start with the coaching. And I almost wanted to stop after the first line on my workbook. Robert Saleh, I think, is a pretty sad excuse for a head coach. I think that out of all the coaching staffs, this is one that was most needed for an overhaul. I mean, Jeff Ulbrich, he has a bunch of great talent. I mean, he makes good talent look good. So I don't know what to think about that. But Saleh was one guy that I think there's no excuse for keeping him on the team. And that goes for a lot of defensive-minded head coaches, that, especially if they haven't proven that they've been successful in the league. For me, they're on a short leash. I'm thinking of Eberflus, too, for the Bears. I mean, what's their impact on the offense? You see clips of these guys, giving their opinions to the offense, whether it's a quarterback or something with the scheme. I don't like it. I don't like Robert Saleh as the coach. And then once we get past the coaching, we see probably the best roster in the NFL with, Sky Dragon in the chat coming in with, probably the most important point of all this is, who is Aaron Rodgers going to be this season? Who is it? We're going to get the old Aaron Rodgers. I mean, under the assumption you get the old Aaron Rodgers as a Super Bowl contender, actually probably likely. I love that they invested in their offensive line. From worst to first, that's what this offensive line is going to be. They're bottom 5 in both run and pass block grades and per PFF and run and pass block win rate. It was pretty sad. And then, I really believe that this team, there could be something there. We'll see how Aaron Rodgers, if he's able to bring it all together. I mean, I kind of wanted to put a future on this team after doing a little bit of research on it. I probably want to do a little bit more before I make a move, but I think Saleh's a cancer. That's the only thing holding me back.
Wow, I haven't heard that extreme of a take on Salah. It's a fascinating one. A cancer is a harsh term for old Bobby Salah. I just find it, from a gambling standpoint, to have a future bet on the New York Jets with a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers is insane. To have a future bet on the New York Jets team that's number one defense in the league, that's great. I mean, if that's the angle you want to use. But Rodgers coming back at 40, hard to have high expectations on him.
With Rodgers, though, I mean, he's the type of guy I feel like you want people to be doubting. Like when you got a guy like you want the doubt surrounding a guy like that. He's the kind of guy that rises to the occasion just to rub it in your face. Like, look how stupid you are.
That's what he thought. Remember when he got drafted, 25th or whatever it was out of Cal? I mean, that was his whole thing was, can you believe these guys passed on me? I'm going to prove them all wrong.
Damn, dude, you just gave me the chills with that memory right there because, that's it right there. That's who Aaron Rodgers is. And I can get behind a bet on the Jets, to be honest.
Really? And so what would be the angle that you would approach it from? Division, conference, Super Bowl?
Division is probably the lowest hanging fruit. I think there's a lot in this division.
Sitting with this information, and that's what this show is all about. We're 9 days from the first game. Sitting with this roster, I mean, how much better is this New York Jets defense than every defense in the AFC East? They're head and shoulders better than them. The other defense.
Yeah, I would say at least double digits. We're talking about double digit per points. So 10%, 15% better at the very least, I would say. I mean, PFF's got him first at all the three major categories: D-line, linebacker, DB. I see it. We see it every week.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess, and it's hard to say it out loud because of, old man Rodgers, tripping on Zooms at the helm. But I do find that division somewhat appealing. Brian Johnson says Jets to win the division. Brady says if you think they win the division, the value would be AFC Super Bowl. Like Sky said, value is all gone in the division now. Let's roll on to the final team in the AFC East, the New England Patriots. 4-13 last year. They are plus 15,000 to win the Super Bowl, plus 8,000 to win the AFC, 28-1 to win the division. Their wins is set at 4.5. That's heavily juiced to the over at minus 150. To make the playoffs, they're plus 950. To have the worst record in the regular season, they're just plus 320. After a great 24-year run, Bill Belichick will not be running the Patriots, replaced by head coach Gerard Mayo. New general manager Elliott Wolf. Mac Jones is gone. Last year, they tied for last in the league in scoring, 13.9 points per game. They hope they found their next franchise quarterback and third overall pick, Drake May. But we are still waiting on Mayo to tell us whether May will be starting or will it be Jacoby Brissett. Offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien is out. In comes former Packers quarterback coach Alex Van Pelt as offensive coordinator. Former Packers offensive coordinator Ben McAdoo is an assistant. Van Pelt was the offensive coordinator for the Browns from 2020 to 2023, but he didn't call the plays. Brissett started 11 games for the Browns in 2022, and he's filled in for Watson during his suspension. Developed a great relationship with Van Pelt. We all expect Brissett to be the starter for game 1. We just are pretty certain he won't be the starter in game 8. Whoever is at quarterback is going to have a weak group of receivers to throw to. They drafted Jalen Polk in the second round out of Washington. They spent a 4th round pick on Javon Baker out of UCF. They have Demario Douglas, promising rookie season. Kendrick Bourne coming off a torn ACL. I don't know how anyone could have hopes in him. They bring in slot receiver KJ Osborne. That's a weapon. They'll be running the ball a lot. We know that. They have Ramondre Stevenson and newly acquired Antonio Gibson. They returned 4 starters on the offensive line, but there are question marks at left tackle. The defense will take a step back because they lose Belichick's mind and Matthew Judon off to the Falcons. Christian Barmore dealing with blood clots. His season is in question. He signed a 4-year, $92 million contract extension with the Patriots in April. 8.5 sacks in 17 games. He was durable. He was excellent. And now question marks around whether he'll be available. New defensive coordinator DeMarcus Covington was promoted after 7 years as a position coach in Foxborough. And young cornerback Christian Gonzalez looked phenomenal before his injury. Kyle Duggar is expected to continue to blossom. Is this the worst team in the NFL this year? Plus 120 on under 4.5 wins is appealing. Is the worst regular season record at plus 320, is that also appealing? Take it away, Troy, the New England Patriots.
I mean, starting off with this Patriots team, just like I did every other team, start with the coaching. Jared Mayo, another defensive-minded head coach. You got to kind of change with the game or get left behind, in my opinion. Alex Van Pelt, another coach that tries to fit a square peg into a round hole. When he was with the Browns, it was clear as day that Deshaun Watson was more efficient by a long shot. It was a complete outlier relative to the rest of his numbers. When he was in 12 personnel opposed to 11 personnel, Alex Van Pelt wouldn't change the offense. He was stubborn, and that's why he ended up getting fired. Now, luckily, thinking about Deshaun Watson, he went down, and then a guy that came into the system was perfect for what he wanted to do. So he got I think he looked better than he really than we should give him credit for, to be honest. So I'm not a big fan of Alex Van Pelt, and this team is probably the worst team in the NFL. I need to do more work on this team, but I like Brissett. I think he's a quarterback that I think can get the job done, knows how to win football games. His career record is really good, especially ATS. So I don't know what to do with this team. Obviously, they had some tough losses on the defensive side early in the season that completely changed the course of this team's trajectory and honestly just kind of put them under the table once Gonzalez went down, as well as some other players. I mean, what'd they do to fix their offensive line? They were terrible last year. They couldn't freaking block for the pass at all, and they didn't do nothing to make any difference. I just don't believe in this team. I'm just going to leave it at that, Jimmy. We can move on.
I think that I may come around to the under 4.5 wins at plus 120. And I don't see why I wouldn't want to have a little worse regular season record in my pocket. I have asterisks on those two spots right now. That is the AFC East. We move on to the AFC North. We start with the Baltimore Ravens. Al Service's Ravens take the cake with a 32-year-old DC that's never called plays. The Baltimore Ravens to win the Super Bowl 9-1. The AFC plus 475. To win the AFC North plus 125. Their win total is at 10.5. It's a pick 'em on either side. Minus 290 to make the playoffs. To have the best regular season record is 9-1. And Lamar Jackson MVP at 14-1. The Ravens lost 17-10 to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship last year. These questions surrounding Lamar Jackson, whether he's capable of taking any team to the promised land, will continue to exist. His regular season resume is spectacular, 58-19 as a starter. But he's 2-4 in the playoffs. They bring in running back Derrick Henry. I mean, he's a perfect fit. I can't wait to watch him in the black and purple. I mean, he's just a perfect fit. But how much is left in the tank of a 30-year-old star who's got a lot of miles on him? Fullback Patrick Ricard is an excellent blocker. I mean, I love that kind of smash mouth football, and I can't wait to watch it. The offensive line lost 3 starters, but they have Pro Bowl center Tyler Linderbaum. Zay Flowers set a Ravens rookie record with 858 receiving yards. All-Pro tight end Mark Andrews returns. The defense was picked apart in the offseason, starting with defensive coordinator Mike McDonald, hired away as the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. The Ravens have new position coaches at all 3 levels. Last year, defense was the first in NFL history to lead the league in sacks, average points allowed, and takeaways in the same season. And in comes Zach Orr, 32-year-old Zach Orr, promoted from inside linebackers coach. He was a Pro Bowl linebacker. We all loved him. You know, of course, his career was cut short by injury. He's very highly thought of in the industry, and he's got a lot of work to do. Justin Madubuike signed a 4-year, $98 million contract extension. He tied an NFL record with at least a half sack in 11 straight games. Roquan Smith, their star linebacker, star safety Kyle Hamilton, Troy Torrence, the Baltimore Ravens.
really love the fact that they hired Zach Orr, and I feel like he's beloved by the players. Like you said, he's been coaching with Harbaugh for a long time. I think since 2016 or 2017. I feel like it's going to be a relatively seamless transition from a guy that's been in the system and know what they did to succeed in the years past. I know it's kind of a new roster, but still at the same time, I love the hire on the defensive side. I love that they hired from within instead of hiring someone off the Rams or the 49ers staff, which we just see over and over. It's kind of getting old at this point. But Lamar Jackson, I mean, he had one of the best seasons of his career. I know there's a lot of talk about the size he came into camp with. He dropped a bunch of weight. He seems to like where he's at. I'm not sure what to make of that right now. But they can't be one-dimensional. Last year, you've seen Todd Monken get completely one-dimensional in the playoffs, and they shot themselves in the foot. Their offensive line lost 3 starters, and now you got Linderbaum, but you also got Ronnie Stanley, who has a little bit of upside. Definitely played underneath his expectations, but still a guy that is going to be a solid, professional NFL starting tackle. They should be fine at the positional groups. When you have a mobile quarterback like Lamar Jackson with that much talent, I'm not really that worried about some of the depth at the skill positions. But this is another team. I mean, you look at their defense; they're stacked. I don't care that they lost Patrick Queen. I know that's a painful loss. That's probably the toughest loss that they had this season. But Roquan Smith is a guy who's going to put in a great performance every week. Whether he's the unsung hero or he's getting 15 tackles a game, he's going to be doing the right things. He's going to be doing his job. The D-line is going to be a committee effort. I think they got a bunch of good names on this roster. Matabuke and Van Noy, Owe. I mean, Owe is probably one of the better graded defensive linemen, but there's plenty of guys over the Mason-Dixon line. Then I think you got the best player and probably the best defender in the game. He's the jackal. He's the jack of all trades. It's Kyle Hamilton. This kid is game-changing. And it's awesome to see a slot cornerback or just a defensive back in general be able to impact the game to the extent that he does. So I think that this defense is going to be second to none. It's going to be right up there with the rest of the elites. The questions about the offensive line, we're going to have to see what that looks like. I'm going to be backing this team, especially early on in the season, especially in week 1. I've already moved on this Ravens team, and I'm confident in the +3. And I'm also on the under in this game. I'm just going to give that out now.
Yeah, I remember when you moved on it and you tweeted it out and made it official, and it's a very interesting spot. You got on the total 47.5. Is that right?
I got the flat 47. Once it took that was the key. I mean, in the early weeks, the market is so efficient on the total. If it takes don't be betting unders if it's moving to the over and vice versa. Just don't. The market knows early in the season.
It's 46.5 right now at 365. Birdie says we are head-to-head on the first play of the year, Troy.
Of course. I'm fading the Chiefs. What else is new?
Let's move on to the Cleveland Browns. 11-6 last year. A very impressive season. You were all over them, Troy. Super Bowl 40-1, AFC 20-1, division +550. Wins are set at 8.5. Over is heavily juiced at -150 to make the playoffs, just the playoffs, +145. Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year at +650. We're in year 3 of the Deshaun Watson era in Cleveland. Shoulder injury shut him down after week 12 last year. The jury's still out on whether his body can hold up through a 17-game campaign. He's showing no sign that he's capable of it. He's made 12 starts over the past 3 years. Backing him up, Jameis Winston. He's only started 10 games over the past 4 seasons. Star running back Nick Chubb recovering from surgeries to repair the torn ACL and MCL he suffered last September. He's going to begin the season on the PUP list, so he'll be at least out for the first 4 games. They have star wide receiver Amari Cooper. They bring in Jerry Jeudy. They give him a big contract. They have star tight end David Njoku. They return their starting line. Jack Conklin trying to work his way back from a second torn ACL, but Pro Bowl guards Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller are back. Myles Garrett is the star on defense, putting fear in opposing quarterbacks. Za'Darius Smith, veteran linebacker Jordan Hicks joined the squad. We got 2 big defensive weapons there. And Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah looked excellent last year. They're extremely strong at corner with Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson Jr., and Greg Newsome. What are your thoughts on the Cleveland Browns, a team that you backed heavily often last year. Take it away, Troy, the Cleveland Browns.
I think I only missed maybe 2 or 3 weeks of the entire season that I didn't bet this Browns team. But on paper, once again, you have all the pillars you want for a Super Bowl caliber team on paper. You got the O-line, you got D-line, you got the upside at quarterback. Who knows what Deshaun Watson's going to be? I'm a little bit optimistic, call me biased. But how could I not be optimistic when you look at this defense? And they should be able to – they're not going to be able to repeat. That was an outlandish outlier performance that they had. They were incredible, off the charts good. But I still think this defense is going to be right up there with the Ravens, with the 49ers as one of the top 5 defenses in the league. And if their offense can perform, if we can get them in 12 personnel, which I hope we see with Deshaun Watson, 12 personnel, we need tight ends and less receivers. His whole career, that's where he's excelled. Even though he might want something different, you got to give the guy what he's good at the end of the day. But if the offense can perform, one of the main problems this defense ran into last year is the fact that they had to play such polarizing defense. I feel like that's a great word, because they were basically playing this high risk, high reward, zero coverage type of defense that tried to create the variance they needed to win football games, because their offense just wasn't up to par. So if they can get their offense to drag their own weight, they don't even have to be incredible. Just good, just be solid, just don't turn the ball over, just, execute in the red zone, just the small things. This team is going to be up there, I think contending once again. So I'm on the Browns in week 1. The line movement is exactly what I want to see on the spread. I moved on, and once I got to 2, I think I got it at 2. I'll have to check because I've been betting this stuff for 5 days in a row now. My cart is huge. And I'm proud of it. I'm very confident in week 1, but I like the Browns in week 1. I like the Browns. If you'd like your futures on the Browns, go get them. I struggle to move on futures. I really do.
But you sound like you would really like the over 8.5 wins. Do you think they're live for the division?
I absolutely think this team is live for the division. And I know that, I think a lot of people think the Bengals are going to go from worst to first. Actually, I don't know if they were worse in the division last year. This is a really good division. It's going to be, it's a highly competitive division. So I don't think I would be interested in a divisional bet, but I will certainly be looking for them week to week, especially within this division. We'll get some good numbers with the Browns.
The Bengals were worst at 9-8, worst in the division. And I took a bath on futures with the Bengals.
Well, you faced a pretty just devastating injuries at every level. Is that the next team up?
I was watching it from Casino Rama when Burrow went down. And I just knew, I was like, well.
It was the right bet. What was Burrow against when he was in the lineup? They were like 4-1, and they beat the best teams in the league. They beat the Niners, whoever else they beat. It was, their 4 wins were versus the best teams in the league. I'm
very excited to talk about the Browns, but they are not next on our list. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 10-7, 40-1 to win the Super Bowl, same number as the Browns, 25-1 to win the AFC. A little bit of a longer shot than the Browns, 7-1 to win the division. Their win total, like the Browns, is at 8.5, but this is heavily juiced to the under at -145. They're plus 175 to make the playoffs, and TJ Watt to be Defensive Player of the Year is 7-1. Russell Wilson expected to start at quarterback, with Justin Fields waiting in the wings for failure or injury. Wilson was much better last year than he was in his first in Denver. 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. There's still a ton of question marks around him as he heads into his 13th season. Former Atlanta Falcons head coach Arthur Smith comes in to run the offense. The Steelers have spent extensive draft capital on their offensive line the last 2 seasons. This year, they drafted Troy Fortano in the first round, but he injured his knee in the first preseason game. It looks like he won't be ready to go week 1. That's still up in the air. They drafted center Zach Frazier in the second round out of West Virginia. Frazier's already locked up the starting center job after the injury to Nate Herbig. They drafted Mason McCormick out of South Dakota State in the 4th round. They have last year's first-round pick Broderick Jones set to start at right tackle. Star wide receiver George Pickens looking to build off his first 1,000-yard season. They got Van Jefferson, Denzel Mims, Quez Watkins. Running back Najee Harris and Jalen Warren lead the way at running back. Najee Harris was not given the extension. Their defense is led by superstar TJ Watt. I mean, we talk about like the Bengals record with Burrow. The Steelers record with TJ Watt lineup is it's just wild. I mean, they're 69, 33-2 when he is in the lineup. They are 1-10 when he is not in the lineup. Alex Highsmith, 21.5 sacks over his last 2 seasons. I mean, that is as dynamic duo as you got in the NFL with Highsmith and Watt. Minka Fitzpatrick returns to anchor the back of the defense. They picked up Patrick Queen from their AFC North rival, the Ravens. Cam Hayward returns for their 14th season. Take it away, Troy. The Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow. I think you're talking me onto the Steelers. I don't know. You like the Steelers, Jim? I mean, you really gave a good cap there. Really compelling, I feel like, narrative for the Steelers. This defense is going to be elite. I think they might be a little undervalued. PFF has this defensive back group rated 23rd in the NFL with Minka Porter and Deontay Jackson. I mean, these are names you associate with very good coverage, which wasn't really the case last year. But I just think that this defense is built for success. You have Tomlin at head coach. Arthur Smith, the criticism on this guy is that he can't manage his personnel. And he's another offensive coordinator that tries to fit a square peg into a round hole. It's his system or pass. He doesn't adapt to his players. He lets his players adapt to his system, and coaches like that are cancers. I got to do more research on this quarterback competition. Is there anything good in the chat? Somebody knows what the deal is with this quarterback competition.
I think it's set. I think it's all set. Russell Wilson starts, and Justin Fields is waiting to get in there.
Can't you see it on the wall already? I mean, I feel like there could be a world where Tomlin and Russell Wilson just make a perfect little tandem. And just, fit well, especially after being embarrassed last season, Russell Wilson. Regardless, I think that there's upside with this team. I love what they did on the offensive line. They needed to address it. They keep investing into it, and that's something I like to see. I think it's a sign of a good front office. They needed a new quarterback. The quarterbacks obviously weren't what they were what they thought they'd be. And thinking back to last year, wasn't Kenny Pickett? Wasn't he like incredible in the preseason? And we got all fired up about that. That's exactly what happened. We got all fired up about Kenny Pickett in the preseason. That's why I don't know about how much equity I put in the preseason at all, because Pickett balled out and he came out and laid an egg, especially in week 1. I was on him. I think we all were on him. This is a team I'm very interested in. Very interested in. Are we going to be betting them? I don't even want to get into week 1 right now. I want to overstep my bounds.
Feel free to jump in on any week 1 action. That's definitely above board. We're not going to go through the week 1 action and the line movements at this point. That will be for next Tuesday, but we'd love to hear your action. I need to sit with the Steelers team for longer. I don't trust Russell Wilson, but I do believe he's an upgrade at quarterback. I think it's pretty easy and simple to say he's an upgrade at quarterback. And they have a pretty good football team. It's a pretty good football team. And we know what Tomlin does.
We know Tomlin wins with marginal quarterback play. We know he does.
Let's roll on to the Cincinnati Bengals. 9-8 last year. I have futures action on the Bengals every year. It feels like 12-1 to win the Super Bowl, 7-1 to win the AFC, plus 165 to win the division. Their wins are at 10.5, juice to the over at minus 135, minus 240 to make the playoffs. To have the best regular season record, 10-1. Joe Burrow comeback player of the year, plus 225. Joe Burrow MVP, plus 900. And Jamar Chase, offensive player of the year, 10-1. Joe Burrow has dealt with knee, calf, wrist injuries over the last few seasons. It was a torn wrist ligament that ended his 2023 season. His past 2 training camps have been hampered by all these injuries, and now he comes into the season healthy. If there's one quarterback in the NFL, if I'm looking over at the Kansas City Chiefs and you say, who's your quarterback? It's Joe Burrow. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no hesitation when I say it. If he can stay healthy, this team can win a Super Bowl. They've spent money to protect him. They signed Trent Brown. They already have 4-time Pro Bowler Orlando Brown Jr. Jamar Chase is a monster. Now, T. Higgins is disgruntled, not extended. Given the franchise tag, he's nonplussed about all that. Joe Mixon was signed by the Texans. Good riddance. I counted him out and completely counted him out. Then he has 1 5-touchdown game. I don't care. Like Zach Moss, I think they'll get more out of Zach Moss than they would have got out of Joe Mixon. Mike Gesicki comes in off of a down season with the Patriots. He's capable of a bounce back season. Offensive coordinator Brian Callahan left to take the head coaching job at Tennessee. Quarterbacks coach Dan Pitcher being promoted to offensive coordinator. Trey Hendrickson comes in off a monster 17.5 sack season. He wanted an extension. He was very angry that he wasn't going to receive the extension. They gave him the extension. He's got it. He's happy. Run stopper DJ Reader is now a Detroit Lion. Sheldon Rankin joins the squad. They need a big year out of Sam Hubbard. I think he's more than capable. Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt return at linebacker. Last year, they were very reliable. They both played every single game. In the secondary, Dax Hill moves from safety to cornerback. Fan favorite Von Bell returns to the team. And they also bring in Ravens safety Geno Stone. Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner, and Mike Hilton hope to continue their progress at corner. I really like this football team, man. I really like them. Take it away, Troy. Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. This is definitely one of the reasons I haven't moved. I could totally see this team being every year there's a team that goes worst to first. This Bengals team could very likely be that team. Obviously, all the pieces are there. Starts with Joe Burrow. Obviously, Joe Burrow has proven he's the caliber of quarterback you want to win a Super Bowl. My only question still with this team is the offensive line. I know we got 2 studs or above average linemen at tackle, which is a great start. It's something that Joe Burrow really hasn't had, and at least they're investing in it. But I don't know if I believe. I guess I have to do more due diligence before I start talking crap about Orlando Brown. But he definitely had a down season last year. The defensive line, you said it. They lost DJ Reader. I don't think it's going to be all that big of a deal. I've read some good things about this defensive line and the depth they do have. Now, I don't, and again, this defense, Joe Burrow could win with this defense. I really got to see what this defense looks like on the field on Sundays before I start committing to anything with Super Bowl or long-term futures with this Bengals team. But I do think that they're totally capable of being the team in this division and potentially threaten. If they can keep Burrow healthy, they're live. I think he's the best quarterback in the league. I think he is.
Look, I'm a 49er fan, and it's not Joe Burrow that ruins our lives. It's Mahomes. So, no team in NFL history has won 3 straight Super Bowls in the history of the sport. And that's what Mahomes is about to do now. So I don't want to, let's not talk about anybody other than that guy. But look, I we'll see next Tuesday. We come to the show. I'll have my futures locked in. I'll tweet them out when I make them. I want to sit with this. That's the reason we're having the show. Look, I like the Bengals. I like them every year. I like them here. I like them a lot here. So, and I'm probably going to have some of that in my pocket when we meet up again in a week. Let's move on. Next up for us, the AFC South. See, the problem with liking the Bengals and the problem with liking the Texans is that they play in the same conference as the Kansas City Chiefs. Texans are 16-1 to win the Super Bowl. They had a 10-7 year last year, 8-1 to win the AFC. They're plus 105 to win the division. Their win totals at 9.5, juiced to the over. To make the playoffs, it's minus 190. CJ Stroud MVP plus 900. D'Amico Ryans Coach of the Year plus 1,200. What a spectacular first season from CJ Stroud and D'Amico Ryans. Now, they face 2 very, very difficult foes. High expectations and a really tough schedule. I've completely talked myself out of futures on them And I really like this football team. CJ Stroud threw for 4,108 yards, 23 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions. He joined, this is the stat where you're like, good God. He joined Joe Montana and Tom Brady as the only quarterbacks over the last 50 years to lead the NFL in both average passing yards per game and touchdown to interception ratio in his rookie season. They bring in veteran weapons. Star receiver Stephon Diggs comes over from the Bills. Look, there was times when Stephon Diggs was a problem in Buffalo. But you know when you want Stephon Diggs? On a 1-year contract with a massive, massive opportunity to get paid in full if he has a great season. Nico Collins, 80 catches, 1,297 yards, 8 touchdowns. What a monster. He enters the last year of his contract. So you're saying that these 2 wide receivers know that if they deliver, they get paid. And that's easy to inspire greatness. They're loadable weapons. Tank Dell, wide receiver. Dalton Schultz at tight end, both playmakers. They need to get more out of their running game, and they bring in Joe Mixon from the Bengals. Look, I'm not a big believer in him, but I don't think they were 22nd in rushing last year, and I don't believe that Mixon, Damian Price, and the 6th-round pick Jawar Jordan are good enough to take the pressure off of Stroud. I do not think this will. I bet you they're right around 22nd, 23rd, 24th in the NFL rushing this season, despite defenses having to play, nickels and dimes and making sure that they defend the pass. Last year, they faced a litany of injuries on the offensive line. Shaq Mason was the staple. He played in all 17 games. But Laramie Tunsil, Juice Scruggs, Titus Howard, if they can stay healthy, they're a really formidable group. The Titans made a ton of moves to fortify their defense. They signed Danielle Hunter and Danico Autry. That's huge, huge pickups. Aziz Al-Shaair, they bring him in at linebacker. They bring in cornerback Jeff Okudah, CJ Henderson. They bring in tackle Foley Fatukasi. They drafted Georgia Bulldog cornerback Kamari Lassiter in the 2nd round. 3rd-round pick safety Kalen Bullock out of USC. Danielle Hunter, Danico Autry come in to play alongside defensive rookie of the year Will Anderson. They're very strong at safety with Jalen Petrie and Jimmy Ward. I like this team so much, but I'm telling you, the most difficult thing for a young team to face is very high expectations and a very tough schedule. Take it away, Troy, the Houston Texans.
Jesus, I mean, with how successful that season was. I mean, every Texans fan viewed that season as a win, despite the loss in the playoffs. You're so right. I just can see it right now, especially early in the season. I think this team is going to be a fade. I've already, I'm putting my money where my mouth is as it relates to that. Stroud is going to be elite quarterback in this league for years to come. The composure, the IQ, accuracy, just everything, top to bottom. This quarterback, he's had it. He's proven it. But it's human nature. Your head gets a little bit too big. I think this offensive line is a little bit under projected. Their offensive line, PFF got them at 20 seconds. I think the injuries that they sustained last season kind of makes this really hard to judge. They have 2 or 3 quality linemen that I think they could put something together and be a substantially, a good, formidable offensive, just a good unit. The wide receiver group is probably the best in the NFL, in my opinion. I love what they got. I love how they all can kind of complement each other in different ways as well. I just feel like it's going to be a pretty deadly combination. Defensively, I think that we're going to see an issue with this defense in the run game. They added Daniel Hunter. That's a superstar tandem with Will Anderson, but these guys are pass rushers. These guys cannot defend the run. They cannot get off their blocks. It just is what it is. And interior-wise, what do you got there? You just don't got any proven players. They lost both their linebackers, Jimmy? Did they lose 2 linebackers in this offseason?
Mm-hmm.
They lost both their linebackers, so we'll see how the new guys incorporate. Obviously, Al-Shaair is just a guy who might have a low PFF grade, but he, in my opinion, he outperforms what PFF got him documented as. But still, I just think this front 7, the box, is going to be a little bit light for this Texans team. So there's going to be some teams that are going to be able to exploit that. But what a surprise this team was last year. And, I'd love to see this team succeed in the future. But early on in the season, this team is I got them flagged as a fade.
I really like this football team, but going over that schedule. I agree with what Skydragon's saying that Stroud is so even keel. Houston will be fine. Yes, they'll be fine, but it's tough coming off of a season like they just had. With all these expectations on them, it's fascinating, and I think that we will find a really nice buy low spot on the Houston Texans, and that's my plan in the future market with them.
I want to say this too, Jim.
Yeah.
Birdie just said something good in the chat. They have played with the lead pretty much most season. That's a really good point that he's making, leading to some soft to rush, decent bend but don't break type of defense from D'Amico, who I think is a genius head coach and what he's able to do with the defensive pieces that he has. That's a really good point. It's a really good point. Something I'm going to have to consider.
Let's roll on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. What a difference a year makes. Very high expectations coming into last season. And I got talked off of them. And thank God, 9-8. This year, they're 45-1 to win the Super Bowl, 22-1 to win the AFC. Their win total is at 8.5, slightly juiced to the over. To make the playoffs, they are plus 120. Expectations have plummeted for these Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall pick in the 2021 draft, must cut down his costly turnovers. Led the league with 21 turnovers last year, 14 interceptions, 7 fumbles. Through 3 seasons, he has 60 turnovers. Left tackle Cam Robinson, right guard Brandon Scherf, right tackle Anton Harrison, all return. Ezra Cleveland re-signed after being acquired in a late season trade with the Minnesota Vikings. Mitch Morse signed as a free agent, released from the Bills, so they got a veteran center there. They need to make space for Travis Etienne to continue his progress. Last year, he again ran for 1,000 yards. He added 11 touchdowns. He also caught 58 passes for 476 yards and a touchdown. Last year's leading receiver, Calvin Ridley, is now a Tennessee Titan, but they bring in Gabe Davis from the Bills to pair him with Christian Kirk. And then, after leading the FBS in touchdown catches last year, the Jags drafted Brian Thomas Jr. 23rd overall. And I don't think this wide receiver group is good enough. I've kind of undervalued Gabe Davis throughout his career. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Brian Thomas Jr. will be a big reason why I am wrong. At tight end, they have Evan Ingram. There has been a major overhaul on defense. When the season ended, Peterson fired defensive coordinator Mike Caldwell. So all of the defensive coaches were let go. Outside linebackers coach Bill Shuey, defensive quality control coach Patrick Riley, assistant defensive line coach Rory Seacrest are the only defensive coaches that remained with the staff. In comes former Atlanta Falcon defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen. He's got Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker, so we have strong edge defenders. They signed 49er defensive tackle Eric Armstead. Cornerback Tyson Campbell has to stay healthy. They signed 10-year vet Ronald Darby. This defense is clearly in a transitional period, and it's difficult to have high expectations for them. I understand why the shine is off of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Take it away, Troy, the Jags.
I talked about this. I basically, if you compare my script right now and you compare it back to week 1 when I was talking about the Jaguars, it's pretty much the same thing. What have they done to address the two position groups that I care most about in the trenches? I don't think they've done very much. I mean, Eric Armstead and Hines Allen are definitely the best two players on this team, and I still think it's a lackluster unit on the defensive line. I mean, after that one good season where they made the playoffs, they lost to the Chiefs, it's been extremely ugly, and I was calling for the bear market last year on the Jags and the Chiefs. So we see how one turned out versus the other. But I think we see this team bottom out this year. I do not see a path to success for this team. I don't know if Trevor Lawrence is the guy anymore. I really don't know. I'm skeptical about that. Something just doesn't seem right with the offense. Like, it just doesn't. There's no fluidity. There's no continuity. There's just something's missing. And now they lose, key skill players. I mean, when Christian Kirk is the highlight of your offensive group, I know Birdie thinks Thomas Jr. from LSU is going to be pretty good. Maybe he is. But I just can't get behind this Jags team. I'm not going to be looking to back them at all.
Let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts and the great Shane Steichen. What a coach. What a young coach. This guy is the real deal. Colts 9-8 last year, 60-1 to win the Super Bowl, 28-1 to win the AFC, plus 320 to win the division. Their wins are at 8.5, juiced to the under at minus 130. They're plus 140 to make the playoffs. And Latu, defensive rookie of the year out of UCLA, 5-1, just 5-1. Steichen's first season at the helm of the Colts was a success. Former Eagles offensive coordinator led the Colts to a 9-8 record and a win away from the playoffs. This team was 4-12-1 in 2022. And they did all that despite losing star rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson to a season-ending shoulder injury in week 5. They played 7 games without Jonathan Taylor. They lost starting nose tackle Grover Stewart to a 6-game suspension for violating NFL's performance-enhancing drug policy. And in the offseason, they didn't change much. They re-signed linebacker Zaire Franklin. They have Michael Pittman Jr. They bring in Joe Flacco to back up Anthony Richardson. The entire offensive line, led by 6-time Pro Bowl guard Quentin Nelson and 4-time Pro Bowl center Ryan Kelly, returns. I mean, Anthony Richardson is in a very nice spot to succeed. They drafted receiver Adonai Mitchell in the 2nd round out of Texas. They need to find weapons other than Michael Pittman Jr., and maybe Mitchell can do that. Pittman Jr. led the team with 1,152 yards receiving. Josh Downs had a strong rookie season. He caught 68 passes for 771 yards. They need more from Alec Pierce badly. I mean, he caught 32 passes for 514 yards. They were hoping to get production out of Jelani Woods, who missed all of last season, but he just underwent toe surgery. So he's expected to miss 4 months. This is not your average turf toe. 4 months Jelani Woods is going to be out for. Kylan Granson's tight end 1. Last year he caught 30 passes for 368 yards, 1 touchdown. Mo Alley Cox has been a disappointment. I mean, I have a vividness bias of Mo Alley Cox catching a ball and running through everybody. It's a bias. He's not that good. His numbers aren't that good. Last year he caught 17 passes for 161 yards, 3 touchdowns. On defense, they have continuity. Nose tackle Grover Stewart, cornerback Kenny Moore, safety Julian Blackman all re-signed. Tackle DeForest Buckner got the 2-year extension. They bring in run stopper Raekwon Davis. UCLA edge rusher Latu, 15th overall pick. Samson Ebukam had 9.5 sacks last year. Kwity Paye had 8.5. Zaire Franklin had the 2nd most solo tackles in the NFL. And EJ Speed, don't sell him short. Secondary was weak last year and must improve. Juju Brents missed 8 games last year due to injury. Take it away, Troy, the Indianapolis Colts.
Jimmy, this might be my team this year. This might be my Cleveland Browns. I absolutely love what this team is made of. Starting with Steichen, who I think you kicked it off. He's absolutely elite. What he's able to do with the roster and just the position he's put in, I think it's brilliant. Just his offensive mind is exactly what you want for a team that's like this, a dark horse. This could be a dark horse this season. I really believe it. I think Anthony Richardson is going to be a winning quarterback in this league, be it he's got to remain healthy. And I think he could end up like RG3 to some extent, where his career gets sent short maybe a little bit. But I think you also think about, like you said, I mean, we got Flacco. He brings depth, dimension to this offense. I think it's perfect for Steichen, to have that in his back pocket if Anthony Richardson ever gets hurt. This offensive line, they have the 2 best tackles in the NFL. They're absolutely dominant last year, and they're good at every position on both fronts, offensive line, defensive line. They're basically above average from left to right. It's a beautiful thing to see. It's exactly what you want to see if you're betting on a dark horse. When you look at this wide receiver group, obviously they're not very good on paper. But you just got to think about it. I mean, a lot with these mobile quarterbacks and what the flexibility they're able to bring to their offense. You got Anthony Richardson. You got one of the best running backs in the league with Jonathan Taylor. You got this great offensive line they can lean on. Hopefully Pierce, especially downfield, Pierce has to be a threat. That's what Pierce has to be, and I think he can be that guy. Then you got Pittman in the mid, working the intermediate, and Downs, who could really do it all. He's pretty impressive. I think this wide receiver group is underrated where they currently are. I believe in this team. I think that there's a lot of good things that I like about them. I'm going to be betting on them early and often. And no futures for me, but definitely a team to look out for.
I'm really interested in them as well. I can't wait to break their week 1 battle down. I expect to be on them. And I expect to have something on them when we get to our show in the futures market. I'm not entirely sure which angle to take, whether it be the 8.5 wins or to make the playoffs. A plus 140 is a nice number.
Yeah, that might be the way to go.
I'm going to spend more time on that. Let's move on to the Tennessee Titans, 6-11 last year, plus 15,000 to win the Super Bowl, 150 to 1, plus 8,000 to win the AFC, plus 900 to win the division. Their win total is at 6.5. It's pretty heavily juiced to the under at minus 135. They're plus 400 to make the playoffs, and to have the worst regular season record, they're plus 900. Vrabel is out as head coach of the Titans, and in comes Brian Callahan. Callahan was the offensive coordinator of the Bengals from 2019 to 2023. New defensive coordinator Denard Wilson comes over from Baltimore, where he was the defensive backs coach. Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry are gone. Last year, in 9 games, he threw for 1,808 yards and 8 touchdowns with 4 interceptions. This year, second-year quarterback Will Levis is at the helm. They signed Calvin Ridley to play alongside DeAndre Hopkins. Pretty talented wide receivers. Tyler Boyd comes in from the Bengals. Of course, he knows Callahan very well. The offensive line was a disaster last year. So the Titans drafted Alabama's J.C. Latham, 7th overall, to begin a much-needed turnaround. They signed the perceived best center on the market in Lloyd Cushenberry. Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears, will try to fill the shoes of Derrick Henry. And I think they can. On defense, the Titans traded for L'Jarius Sneed. They signed Chidobe Awuzie. Then they drafted Jarvis Brownlee Jr. to be their 4th corner. Awuzie's dealing with a calf injury. They do expect them to be ready to go for week 1. Danico Autry left for the Texans, but they drafted Devondre Sweat out of Texas in the 2nd round to play beside Jeffrey Simmons. Harold Landry and Arden Key remain on the squad. Take it away, Troy, the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Birdie. I mean, I do see that this team probably has some value on them. I mean, they're so desolate. You look at the roster and this is one of those teams that they're so bad that they got to be good almost. Like, you go against the grain in terms of how you're looking at this team. I really like what they have on defense. I think they're vastly underrated. I know that Arden Key is regressing, but Jeffrey Simmons is probably one of the best defensive players in the league. But at the same time, I mean, being one guy on a defense, it's easy to get schemed around. L'Jarius Sneed. The acquisition of L'Jarius Sneed I love seeing him leave KC because he was their best player. I think L'Jarius Sneed is one of the most impactful defenders in the NFL. I think that this team will likely start the season pretty slow and probably have some favorable regression and probably are about league average, maybe slightly below average. It's hard to get behind a team with Will Levis at quarterback and the worst offensive line in the league in 2023 that are now dependent on 2 rookies to perform. So they have some options on offense. Their defense has a lot of upside on this defense. And we'll see what they're made of. Week 1, they're catching 4.5 against the Bears, and they look like a mighty good bet, to be honest.
Yeah, I've grown on them.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. The more the second time through, touching them again, I was like, I started to come along.
Those are the Tennessee Titans, and that concludes the AFC South. Let's roll on. Next up for us is the AFC West and the Kansas City Chiefs, trying to become the first team in NFL history to win 3 straight Super Bowls. 11-6 last year. They're plus 550 to win the Super Bowl, plus 325 to win the AFC, minus 250 to win the division. Their win total is placed at 11.5, slightly juiced to the over, minus 550 to make the playoffs. To have the best regular season record, they're plus 475. Patrick Mahomes MVP, plus 500. And Xavier Worthy, Offensive Rookie of the Year, at plus 1,600 out of Texas. I'm very interested in it. Kadarius Toney was released today. I'm very interested in maybe taking a flyer on Xavier Worthy. Last year, the Chiefs had the weakest offense in the Mahomes era, and they still won it all. Finished 15th in scoring, 21.8 points per game. 9th in total yards. The wide receiving group led the league in drops last year with 44. They signed Hollywood Brown via free agency. And, of course, Xavier Worthy. Rashee Rice is capable of taking the next step after catching 79 passes for 938 yards last year. And he is not being suspended for his part in a street race on a Dallas toll road that caused a 6-car crash back in March. He was facing 8 charges against him as a result. They've not even met with Rashee Rice, the league. So they haven't even met with him to discuss a suspension. That means that he's most likely going to be able to play most, if not all, of the 2024 season. It takes months to process a case like this. Travis Kelce is now 34 years old, but he continues to deliver. Last year, he caught 93 passes for 984 yards and 5 touchdowns. It was the first time he didn't catch for 1,000 yards since 2015. Isaiah Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire return at running back. This offensive line is excellent. Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, right guard Trey Smith, they all return. On defense, star defensive tackle Chris Jones received a record contract extension. It's a happy group. The rest of the tackle group, Derek Noddy, Tershawn Wharton, Mike Pennell, they all re-signed, along with Mike Dana, George Karlaftis, 10.5 sacks. Charles Omenihu suffered that torn ACL in the AFC Championship game, so he's going to be on the PUP list to start the year, but he's going to come back at some point. Like you talked about, they lost L'Jarius Sneed to Tennessee, and Willie Gay Jr. signed with the Saints. Drew Tranquil and Nick Bolton headline this linebacker core. All-Pro Trent McDuffie leads the cornerback room. Safety Justin Reed, 95 tackles last year. He returns. Take it away for us here, the Kansas City Chiefs.
This was undoubtedly one of my biggest blemishes from last season. So by all means, omit or disregard what I'm about to say. But I'm once again, just like last year, calling for a bear market. I don't think that this team should have been Super Bowl champions. I could document a freaking full 3 pages of evidence that would suggest that the game was a little bit skewed in favor of Kansas City, to say the least. And how about just every bounce that bounces their way? Bass misses the field goal to win the game against the Bills early in the playoff run. Then you go to the Super Bowl, you get a muffed punt that hits some guy in the foot. One of the worst punts of the game ends up being a turnover in their favor in the red zone. I mean, this team has obviously been one of the luckiest teams in the NFL the past few years, winning 3 Super Bowls in a row. It's funny. I'm like, what's the narrative going to be this season? And then here we go already. First team in history to win 3 straight. It just never ends with this team. They got 2 genius coaches. Matt Nagy rides the coattail. Their offense is going to be legitimate. Their offensive line improved year over year, which I thought was terrible last year. They were one of the most penalized teams in the league. Obviously, cleaned that up in the Super Bowl with 0 penalties. And they've improved year over year. They're very good on the interior offensive line and questionable at tackles, but there is some upside. Obviously, the offensive line improved. Wide receiver, DB, I want to say it's a lateral move. I don't think they really got much better. Especially like Birdie talked about. I mean, you got 3 of the same type of players with Worthy, Brown, and Rashee Rice. I mean, they really have no size at the wide receiver position. That's a little bit concerning. Mahomes is the GOAT. He's also the ref's favorite player. So it's hard. How can you argue with this team being successful, especially in the division they're in? But the defense is where I think they're vastly overrated, to be honest. I think it's defensively extremely top-heavy with 3 players. They got 3 good players on their defense. Chris Jones, Chenal, the second-year player out of Wisconsin. He's a stud. McDuffie at corner. They lost to Jerry Sneed, but somehow they're getting top 10 rankings for PFF. I just don't get it. I still don't get it. So I'm not going to go too much more. I'm not going to be backing this Chiefs team. I'm going to be fading them.
Yeah, I look forward to joining you in the fade of them. These guys are superstars. I mean, how is Kelce supposed to play 17 games right now that he's a superstar? I find it difficult to believe that they're capable of winning 3 in a row. But obviously, Mahomes is Mortal Kombat. It ripped my heart out of my chest and finished me on more than one occasion. Let's go into the Las Vegas Raiders 8-9 Super Bowl plus 8,000, AFC plus 5,000 to win the division 9-1, win total at 6.5, juice to the over to make the playoffs plus 290, and Max Crosby to be the defensive player of the year is plus 750. Gardner Minshew has been announced as a starting quarterback, a leading offense that stars Devontae Adams at wide receiver, and only scored 19.5 points per game last year. They bring in new offensive coordinator and Luke Getsy. He was a Bears offensive coordinator last 2 seasons. They draft Georgia tight end Brock Bowers with the 13th overall pick. They plan on running 2 tight end sets with Bowers and Michael Mayer. They drafted Oregon guard Jackson Powers Johnson in the 2nd round. He fortifies that right side of the line. Left side is Colton Miller, Dylan Parham, and center Andre James. Jacoby Myers lines up across from Devontae Adams. Zamir White, I mean, we saw what he did in the last 4 games of the season last year. He's going to step in for Josh Jacobs, a full-time RB1 now for Zamir White. Jacobs moved on to the Packers. Patrick Graham enters his 3rd season as defensive coordinator. The Raiders' defense was much improved last season, led, of course, by Max Crosby. But then they bring in Christian Wilkins. They're expecting a lot more out of 2023 7th overall pick Tyree Wilson. He's been a disappointment. They have a strong linebacker tandem in Robert Spillane and Divine Diablo. The secondary features Jack Jones, Nate Hobbs, Trayvon Morig, Marcus Epps. The Raiders' defense is going to be really strong. They're going to be able to move the ball on the ground. Can we trust Gardner Minshew to not make ass clown decisions? And maybe this is a team that will pay us out with unders throughout the season. Take it away, Troy, the Raiders.
The more this is kind of like the Titans a little bit. The more I sat with this team, the more I started to like them. I love that they rehired Antonio Pierce. I love what he did as an interim coach. Obviously, he gets the players to play for him. That's obvious. You can't fight that. And I think that's all a head coach really needs to be. But that means that you need a competent offensive and defensive coordinator, which I don't know if Luke Getsy is. I think he's a product of Matt LaFleur, but he's not been impressive at all. I feel like he has no situational or personnel awareness. I feel like he really struggles to really understand the depth of his scheme. I just don't know if he even has a scheme. I questioned it in Chicago watching him, watching the Bears week in and week out. But I think Minshew's proven he could be a perfect backup in the NFL. But now we're talking about a starter. Is he a starting caliber quarterback? And you give Getsy, giving him direction? I don't know. But I do see a huge upside with this offensive line. This is an offensive line I think performed great last season. They graded out very well. Run block and pass block win rate, top of the league. Right now, their PFF grade is 19, and I think this is a top 10 potential team. You look at the only 2 positions they're weak at, and they're both young guys who actually took a jump up in the subsequent year. You got Devontae Adams. The skill group is pretty much terrible. There's a reason. They're 17th per PFF, though, and that's because Brock Bowers. I feel like he brings a lot of different ability with this offense, and we'll see how I think Brock Bowers is going to be a star in this league. On the defense, I think we see another underrated unit. I mean, the bright spot on this team is their defensive line, but beyond Max Crosby, I feel like there's a lot of unproven talent on this defense, so that we'll see what they're made of. I think that this could be a team that surprises a lot of people this season. Hopefully they surprise the Chiefs.
That over 6.5 is appealing.
It is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially with the schedule they had. That's what I was just looking at before we pulled up. And also, if their spread ticks down to that 3, which it's looking like it's going to get squeezed to 3 in a little bit here over the course of the next week, I'm going to be on the Raiders in week 1 against the Chargers.
Oh, I can't wait to cap that game with you. Let's move on to the Denver Broncos, 8-9 to win the Super Bowl, plus 12,500, 125-1 to win the AFC, 75-1 to win the division, 16-1. Win total at 5.5, juice to the over. Make the playoffs at plus 600. And Bo Nix to be the offensive rookie of the year is 10-1. Bo Nix out of Auburn. And the Broncos have the worst regular season record in the league, is plus 600. And Sean Payton's first year as head coach, the Broncos finished 8-9. They now have not made the playoffs in 8 years, and they've suffered through 7 straight losing seasons. They cut all-pro safety Justin Simmons, traded away Jerry Jeudy, moved on from Russell Wilson. That's just so wild. They're preferring to absorb an $85 million dead cap hit. They draft Bo Nix in 12th overall out of Auburn. They awarded him the starting job over Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham is very upset about it, probably saying the wrong things in the media. And Bo Nix won't have all-pro center Lloyd Cushenberry, who signed with the Titans. Javonte Williams recovered from his ACL injury. Did he look like North Carolina's Javonte Williams? And he didn't. He did not look good. Samaje Perine, we know he can catch the ball in the flats, but Jameel McLaughlin behind him on the depth chart. Cortland Sutton leads this wide receiver group. Can Tim Patrick return to form after missing the past 2 seasons with knee and Achilles injuries? Troy Franklin was drafted in the 4th round out of Oregon. They need Marvin Mims to blossom. They need him to have more opportunities. They signed Josh Reynolds in the offseason. They got very little out of their tight end group last year. Adam Troutman, they need a ton more from him. Vance Joseph's defense had a huge turnaround. So they were the first team since 1966 to allow 70 points in a football game in their loss to the Dolphins. 5 weeks later, they hold the Chiefs to no touchdowns and beat them 24-9. Surtain remains the leader of the defense. Teams stay away from him. They target who is ever on the other side. It's very tough to play on the other side of Surtain. It's Riley Moss or Levi Wallace. The rush defense was the 3rd worst in the league. I don't see how that's going to change. They have Zach Allen and DJ Jones. A linebacker, they lost Josie Jewell, but replaced him with Alex Singleton and Cody Barton. You know that Denver hasn't had a player with double-digit sacks since 2018? Take it away, Troy, the Denver Broncos.
This was a team last year that I was looking to fade pretty much every week, looking for the right moment to fade them. And one of my biggest bets of the year, I faded them, and I was very happy with the cash. But I think it's interesting to see what Sean Payton's going to do with this new impressionable rookie. I think it could be dangerous one way or the other. I feel like you're going to get not elite quarterback play, but he's going to be very polarizing with his outcome. He's going to be very good. He's going to fit well with Gary Payton, or it's going to be the complete opposite. And when you look for the pillars on this team, they're just not there. They're soft in the trenches. They cannot stop the run. I don't think when Alex Singleton is your best box defender, you have a problem. Now, obviously, you have probably one of the best corners in the league with Surtain. But there's Brandon Jones, and then the other half of the secondary is amongst the worst in the NFL. They can't cover. They can't stop the run. I don't see what would change year over year with Vance Joseph as the defensive coordinator. I think that this team's defense is going to be terrible. And I think the offense probably is going to be terrible too. This is not a team that I'm going to be looking to back.
Tim Patrick was released 5 hours ago. Tim Patrick released from trying to trade him. So no trade. Tim Patrick released. Thanks for that, Dante Raines. Yeah. Maybe we want that worst regular season record in our pocket. Are you under the belief that these teams with young or high drafted quarterbacks in their rookie season will try to win until the end of the season to create that just that winning vibe for a young rookie quarterback, that the teams that don't have a first round quarterback that's in his rookie season can let go, but the teams with the rookie, do you agree with that sentiment?
That's a good question. I actually don't believe that to be the case here, because I feel like it's going to be very obvious if Bo Nix is the guy or not. And I worst record in the NFL, like that would be a future that interests me. But again, I would rather just be week to week with my investments.
5.5 is the win total. Brady says Sean Payton is elite. Broncos were in the playoff hunt until week 15 last year. Payton's all in on Knicks. Broncos are going to be very competitive, says our man Birdie. Birdie was our NFL Pub Hub champion this past season. What a spectacular performance he delivered. I can't wait to see him back that up. We haven't had a champion back-to-back seasons. Let's see if Birdie can do it this year. Let's roll on. Los Angeles Chargers, 5-12. My pops has season tickets for these Los Angeles Chargers. 35-1 to win the Super Bowl, 18-1 to win the AFC, plus 350 to win the division. Win total at 8.5, heavily juiced to the over at minus 155, plus 105 to make the playoffs. Jim Harbaugh to be coach of the year at 8-1. Justin Herbert MVP at 16-1. So after 9 years leading the Michigan Wolverines, Harbaugh replaces Brandon Staley as head coach of the Chargers. And he wants his Chargers to be a run-heavy team. So Austin Eckler gone. Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins in. They signed Will, is the best tight end blocker for running in the business, and they gave him $10 million. Right, I'll go over exactly what they gave him, but it's clear that Harbaugh wants to take the pressure off of Herbert by running the ball nonstop. Herbert loses his two main targets in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So Quentin Johnson was a huge disappointment. He needs a bounce back season. He's capable of it. Joshua Palmer needs to deliver. They signed DJ Shark. They draft Ladd McConkey in the second round out of Georgia. He's going to start in the slot. They signed Hayden Hurst. Bradley Bozeman takes over at center. Rashawn Slater and Zion Johnson anchor the left side. And then 5th overall pick Joel Alt out of Notre Dame. And the reviews of him in preseason he is spectacular. I mean, they're raving about him. Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa return.
Who was that last guy, Jim? Who did you say that was the raving about?
Joe Alt, the 5th overall pick in the draft. They're raving. They signed Bud Dupree and Poona Ford. But I have very low expectations of Joey Bosa. And if you watch this team play every day, like my pops does, he despises Joey Bosa. They allow both their starting inside linebackers, Kenneth Murray and Eric Kendricks, to leave. They bring in Denzel Perryman. That's a very low-cost addition. There are concerns at cornerback. Asante Samuel leads a group. Christian Fulton, Jazir Taylor, Leonard, Derwin James anchors the back end. There's a lot of talk about Staley using Derwin James poorly, that he's going to have a much better season this year. The jury's out on that. Take it away for us here, Troy, the Los Angeles Chargers.
I feel like this is another team that the more you sit with them, the more you start to like them. I like Jim Harbaugh. I like Greg Roman. I like Jesse Minter. I think this is a good coaching staff to have in place for long-term success. Is the lineup there? Is the team ready to take the next step? And obviously, I think I don't even want to spend too much time with the offense, because I believe that the offensive line is going to be able to step up to the occasion. I love what they got at tackle, especially if they, my research on Alt was not only was he was one of the best offensive lines in all of football for years in college. I think that this team has a lot of potential on offense, obviously, but the question is defense. I mean, the age, the injuries, it's just kind of washed up offensive line. Colmack and Bosa, looking at those on paper, they look really good. I fell into that trap last year. They did not perform, but potentially much better with Staley gone. If you remember what I was talking about last year, the defensive coaching was just awful. It was a fire drill every single snap. Players were running around, getting set up until literally the second the ball was snapped, nobody was lined up. And that was almost every play. At least multiple times of possession. That's unacceptable, especially when you got veterans in that. I just don't understand how that even happened. So we should see a much better Chargers team year over year. Obviously, Herbert, a lot of people are bailing on Herbert. I still think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He still grades out to be that way. I think McConkey and Quentin Johnson are very capable of holding their weight on offense. And we'll see what this team looks like. I actually have higher hopes than most for this Chargers team.
Yeah, I love the Joe Alt draft too. You don't need anything exciting. You need to start creating an opportunity for Herbert to not have to throw 45 passes a game. So that is the AFC. Let's move on to the NFC. We start with the NFC East and the Dallas Cowboys. 12-5 last year, 16-1 to win the Super Bowl, plus 650 to win the NFC. Plus 170 to win the NFC East. Win total at 9.5, heavily juiced to the over at minus 150, minus 200 to make the playoffs. Micah Parsons, Defensive Player of the Year, plus 450. CeeDee Lamb, Offensive Player of the Year at 9-1. And Dak Prescott, MVP at plus 1,600. Of course, CeeDee Lamb signed the 4-year, $136 million extension. League best 135 receptions, 1,749 yards, 12 touchdowns last year. Ended his holdout yesterday. So we have a happy CeeDee Lamb. Cowboys coming off that ugly 48-32 loss to the Packers in the NFC wildcard round. Dak Prescott comes in off being second in MVP voting behind Lamar Jackson. He threw 36 touchdown passes. Brandon Cooks is WR2 with CeeDee Lamb WR1. Jalen Tolbert did enough to replace Michael Gallup as a number 3. Zeke returns the fact that this team thinks they can have Zeke, Rico Dowdle, Royce Freeman as their running backs is astonishing. Astonishing. The offensive line has question marks. Of course, Tyler Smith, but Zach Martin getting a little long in the tooth, not the player he once was. And they're asking a lot from draft picks. I mean, Cooper Beebe, their center, left tackle Tyler Guyton. Zimmer has replaced Dan Quinn as defensive coordinator after Quinn left to become the coach of the Commanders. This defense anchored by Micah Parsons, 40.5 sacks, 7 forced fumbles in 3 seasons. DeMarcus Lawrence slowing down. He can still play. They drafted Marshawn Nealand in the second round out of Western Michigan. They need more out of 2023 first-round pick Mozzie Smith. He did nothing. They bring in linebacker Eric Kendricks. Kendricks played for Zimmer from 2014 to 2021 with the Vikings, so he knows him well. Look, the Cowboys missed Trayvon Diggs a ton. He tore his ACL 2 games into the season. 18 interceptions since entering the league. Now, obviously, that opened up the door for Deron Bland to be a monster and to set the NFL record for most interceptions returned for a touchdown in a single season with 5. He will start opposite Diggs. Stephon Gilmore also departed in free agency. I cannot get past this running back group. I'm shocked that this is what they want to go to war with. Take it away for us, Troy. Cowboys.
Year in a long time where we're very skeptical about the Cowboys' offensive personnel. And then you look at the top of the chart, and that's Mike McCarthy, who this man has proven his inability to lead. I feel like he constantly underperforms, constantly makes terrible decisions in games. And you look at Dak, and he always kind of gives you the illusion that he's an elite quarterback at some point in the season. I'm always sitting there in the middle of the season, like, who is this guy? I'm always confused of what to expect from Dak, but I think the Dak and McCarthy combo just doesn't work. The offensive line, they're really good at guard, but they lost their first time in forever where I see there's question marks on this offensive line. They have a number 10 ranking per PFF preseason for their offensive line, but I actually think that there's a lot of downside to that 10 and not much upside. And then you look at the offensive skill set, the skill position, and it's just lackluster. I mean, I don't believe in Brandon Cooks is better than average. I mean, at best, he's an average receiver. CeeDee Lamb's very top heavy, gives you elite talent, but you don't got much there. And obviously this defense, I believe this defense will still perform and still be able to put up the numbers, or, maybe not as drastic of the numbers that they have in the past, but just because they were such an outlier for so long in terms of creating turnovers and scoring touchdowns and whatnot. But yeah, defense should be fine. Question marks on offense. Not a team that I like in this division, any futures or anything of that nature. So I'm actually going to be looking to fade this team.
I think it's a pretty easy team to defend, honestly. CeeDee Lamb is a monster. Double him up.
Double him up.
Who's going to hurt you? All right, let's roll on to the next team here in the NFC East. The Philadelphia Eagles, 11-6 last year, 14-1 to win the Super Bowl, plus 550 to win the NFC, minus 135 to win the division. Win total at 10.5, heavily juiced to the over at minus 140. Make the playoffs minus 270. To have the best regular season record, plus 800. Jalen Hurts, MVP, plus 1,400. Quinion Mitchell, Defensive Rookie of the Year, 12-1. Quinion Mitchell out of Toledo. After a 10-1 start, the Eagles season, they lost 5 of their last 6 games. They lost badly, 32-9 to Tampa in the wild card round. Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox retire, and Hassan Reddick left for the Jets. Kellen Moore comes in, the new offensive coordinator. Jalen Hurts leads this offense. Last year, he threw for 3,858 yards, 23 touchdowns, a career-high 15 interceptions in the big offseason acquisition. Of course, Saquon Barkley, signed away from the Giants. Kenneth Gainwell, 4th-round pick out of Clemson. Will Shipley, that's rounding out that running back room. And A.J. Brown caught 106 passes last year. He was extended to the tune of 3 years and $84 million. Devonta Smith caught 81 passes last year. They signed Paris Campbell in the offseason. Cam Jurgens replaces Jason Kelsey. The offensive line is strong. We know that. Elaine Johnson, Mailata Dickerson. Vic Fangio comes in from Miami to take over the defense. What a fall from grace this pass rush was last year. 70 sacks in 2022, monsters. Just 43 in 2023. The secondary struggled. Now they re-signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and they used 2 draft picks on the cornerbacks for Quinion Mitchell, 22nd overall out of Toledo, and Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. Both look really good. The jury's out with what they're going to get from Avonte Maddox. Missed most of last year with a torn pectoral muscle. Isaiah Rodgers reinstated after being suspended last year for gambling. Reed Blankenship returns at safety. And they signed Bryce Huff to replace Hassan Reddick. Josh Sweat, strong outside rusher. Brandon Graham back. They need more out of Jalen Carter. The Eagles brought in former Buck Devin White at linebacker, so he'll line up with Nakobe Dean and Zach Braun. Take it away here for us, Troy, the Philadelphia Eagles.
I think one thing the Eagles were missing last year is just more motion, there's just got to be more dimensions to the offense. I guess that's the best way to put it. It was so stagnant. There was no motion pre-snap, and I think that there was no small ball like built into the scheme. And that's something that I think Kellen Moore is really good at, is building small ball into the scheme. A lot of motion. I think we're going to see a much better looking, because after Steichen left, there was none of that. There was no type of complexity to the offense. It was very straightforward, very RPO. And people are saying the RPO is dead now, looking at and using Jalen Hurts' numbers as an example. I just think it was poorly executed and poorly schemed. And obviously Vic Fangio, I think that's an incredible hire for this defense. This is the question I had looking at this team, is the defense. And at first glance, you can think that, their defensive line right now is a PFF graded 3rd overall. At first glance, I was like, this is vastly overrated. They still have top end talent, but they didn't perform last year. But the pieces are there. Jalen Carter was absolutely dominant. Bryce Huff, in my opinion, he's way better than Hassan Reddick. I think Hassan Reddick took a major step back last year. You got Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat, who are still going to be viable options and very good defenders. And they're going to need their young talent to step up, because one place where they're extremely weak is at linebacker. You got Devin White. Zach Braun. I think that this is probably the worst linebacker group in the NFL. But I think that there's upside on the defensive back front. 24th overall per PFF. And I think that with Slay, Gardner Johnson, and Blankenship, they should not be a part of a unit that's ranked in the 20s. And I think that excuse me, I think that the rookies, Quinton Mitchell and Kelly Ringo, I think they're going to step up. I think that this team is going to be back to where they were 2 years ago, threatening for an NFL Super Bowl. And this is the only future I moved on. It was the Eagles to win the Super Bowl plus 1,300.
Wow.
Also, the line movement in week 1, I have to call this out. I know that it's not the home road dichotomy, because it's not going to be played, in Philadelphia. They're not necessarily a home team, but still, regardless, the line movement between the threes is so telling of what the result is going to be. And it's highly correlated. I'm on the Eagles in week 1.
Wow, that was a very, very interesting breakdown. Let's move on to the New York Giants, 6-11 to win the Super Bowl plus 10,000, 100 to 1. To win the NFC, 50 to 1. To win the division, 14 to 1. 6.5 is the win total, heavily juiced to the under at minus 145. 4 to 1 to make the playoffs. Malik Neighbors, offensive rookie of the year out of LSU, 12 to 1. And to have the worst regular season record is plus 1,000. Year 3 of Brian Daboll and general manager Joe Schoen. There are a lot of question marks. First, of course, Danny Dimes. Can Daniel Jones deliver after tearing his ACL in year 1 of his $160 million 4-year extension? Can Devin Singletary replace Saquon Barkley at running back? Malik Neighbors, that's the best receiver that Danny Dimes has ever had. They bring in John Runyon, Aaron Stinney to help the offensive line led by Andrew Thomas. Waller retires, so Daniel Bellinger now tight end 1. Wink Martindale out as defensive coordinator, replaced by former Titans defensive coordinator Shane Bowen. Defensively, they made that big splash by bringing in Brian Burns. He'll line up alongside Kayvon Thibodeau, who had 11.5 sacks last year. Shout out to Goran Nikovsky. Thank you so much for the dono, my friend. So Thibodeau and Brian Burns, this pass rush is going to be very strong. The secondary looks weak, exasperated by the loss of Xavier McKinney in free agency. Deonte Banks needs to take the next step after a strong rookie season. They drafted safety Tyler Nubin in the second round out of Minnesota and Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky. Drew Phillips. This team could be really bad. And I'm interested in the under 6.5 wins. I could be interested in that worst regular season record, but I think that's just the Patriots set up for them. But take it away, Troy, the New York Giants.
Yeah, I'm going to be short-winded with this one. Something about this Giants team with Dabble always captures my interest. I mean, I feel like Daniel Jones, who has a wide range of potential outcomes, there's just not enough pieces for him. There's just not enough pieces there for him to be successful, especially with this young wide receiver core. The secondary's like completely young and not very good based on where they were at last season. I feel like the defense has some upside if everything falls their way, but this is just not a team that I'm looking to back, especially with seeing the line movement in week 1. But yeah, this is just a team that I'm going to pass on in the short term.
Let's move on to the Washington Commanders. But D. Jenkins saying yes, Jimmy, the under 6.5 wins. Let's roll. Washington Commanders 4-13 on the year to win the Super Bowl plus 12,500, 125 to 1. To win the NFC 60 to 1. To win the division 10 to 1. Win total at 6.5, juice to the over at minus 130. To make the playoffs plus 300. And Jaden Daniels, offensive rookie of the year out of LSU at 6 to 1. And to have the worst regular season record 12 to 1. A lot has changed in Washington, starting with the new owner and Josh Harris, new head coach in Dan Quinn, new general manager in Adam Peters, new quarterback and second overall pick, Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels, new offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury, new defensive coordinator in Joe Witt Jr. That is a massive amount of changes. Daniels does not have a strong wide receiving group to throw to. You got Scary Terry, 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, but little else. Dotson was traded to the Eagles last week, opens up a spot for Luke McCaffrey. Olamide Zaccheaus joins the squad. A running back there, Brian Robinson Jr., and they replaced Antonio Gibson with Austin Eckler. Nothing wrong there. They signed tight end Zach Ertz. They drafted Ben Sinnott, 53rd overall out of Kansas State. Sinnott is going to be the tight end 1, we've been told, but Zach Ertz will play. Their offensive line was atrocious last year, and they tried to rebuild it in the offseason. They signed Tyler Biadasz, out of the Cowboys. They signed Nick Allegretti. They spent a 3rd-round pick on TCU's Brandon Coleman. Dan Quinn brought along his secondary coach and passing game coordinator with the Cowboys, Joe Witt Jr., to serve as the defensive coordinator. They bring in Dorrance Armstrong, Dallas edge rushers Dante Fowler Jr., as well as Cleveland Farrell through free agency. They also signed veteran linebackers Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, and then safety Jeremy Chin. I mean, these are really well-known entities in the NFL. And they returned veteran defensive tackle Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, former Alabama teammates. They drafted Johnny Newton out of Illinois in the 2nd round. They drafted Mike Sainristil with the 50th overall pick out of Michigan to add to their secondary. Take it away, Troy, the Washington Commanders.
I think that this Commanders team is also up for one of the worst teams in the NFL. I just feel like I think Jaden Daniels' situation is a lot different from what Bryce Young was. I don't know what to expect from Jaden Daniels coming out early, but obviously he's bigger. He's got more weight to him. He's 6'4", 210. I think he's going to be better off in this league, especially out the gate, just because of the fact that he's got more size and also that they've invested in this offensive line. They didn't leave him out to dry. And he does have some options on offense. Obviously, there's not a lot of depth there, but at least he has a better setup than some of the rookie quarterbacks we've seen in the NFL lately. Defensively, I think that this is going to be a travesty, especially in the defensive backfield. They're graded out as one of the worst defenses last year. I expect that to continue. They lost their 2 best DBs, Cameron Curl, Kendall Fuller, and I think that was really the only bright spots on this defense. They did acquire Bobby Wagner to kind of washed up at this point to kind of accompany Louvu in the box. This good run defenders, not very good in coverage. It's going to be their strongest suit as their linebacker core. It's just not a team that I'm going to be. I think it's going to be a 2 or 3 year rebuild with this Commanders team. But there'll be times where maybe the Commanders are going to be the right side. So I'm not counting them out like I would some of these teams. But for right now, I'm just going to pass on this Commanders team.
I have interest in the under 6.5 wins. I'm going to sit with it for longer. It's juice to the over. I don't know if I get there. But I have interest.
Having such a bad record, I think they do have a kind of a tough route, if I remember correctly. I think that the under actually makes sense.
That is the NFC East, one of the most fun divisions to cap. Let's move on to the NFC North, a very fun division to cap. The Detroit Lions, we start with 12-5 last year, 12 to 1 to win the Super Bowl, plus 550 to win the NFC, plus 130 to win the division. Win total at 10.5, juice to the over at minus 130. To make the playoffs, minus 250. To have the best regular season record, 9 to 1. For Jared Goff to be MVP, 18 to 1. Terrion Arnold, Defensive Rookie of the Year, 10 to 1. Aiden Hutchinson, Defensive Player of the Year, 14 to 1. After winning their first division title in 30 years and running all the way up to the NFC title game, what will the Lions do for an encore? Dan Campbell enters his fourth year as coach of the Lions. Offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, again, supposedly turning down all these head coaching jobs to stay in Detroit. Jared Goff threw for 4,575 yards, 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Received a 4-year, $212 million extension with $170 million guaranteed for his troubles. He's protected by an excellent offensive line. 4 of the 5 starters return, and you got all pros, center Frank Ragnow, right tackle Penei Sewell, that contract extension, that monstrous contract extension, highest paid offensive lineman. Lions signed Kevin Zeitler, a Pro Bowler in Baltimore last year. He's to replace Jonah Jackson. Taylor Decker, left tackle. Left guard, Graham Glasgow. I mean, that's a really nice group. Really nice group. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs became the first teammates in NFL history to produce at least 1,000 yards from scrimmage and 10 rushing touchdowns each in the same season. Sammy Laporta, what a monster he was, set an NFL record for first-year tight ends with 86 catches. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 119 catches for 1,515 yards and 10 touchdowns, and rewarded with a 4-year, $120 million contract, $16.5 million signing bonus, $77 million guaranteed. They lose Josh Reynolds, but Jameson Williams ready to step up. Khalif Raymond, Donovan Peoples-Jones returning. And Aaron Glenn's defense saw real improvement last year. They finished second in the NFL against the run. They allowed a league low 500-yard games, 100-yard games last year. In the offseason, they signed DJ Reader. So you have a very good run defense that just got better. Aiden Hutchinson led the NFL in quarterback hits, made his first Pro Bowl. They signed Marcus Davenport in free agency. They're hoping for a full year out of James Houston, and broke his ankle week 2 last year. And Alex Anzalone, I mean, talk about the heartbeat of a defense. How do you not love watching him on the field? He's electric. The weakness on defense last year was the secondary. So they trade for Carlton Davis from the Bucs. They sign Amik Robertson. They draft Terrion Arnold, who we spoke of, 24th overall pick out of Alabama. And then they use the 61st overall pick to draft Missouri corner Ennis Rakestraw Jr. Take it away for us, Troy, the Detroit Lions.
This team is at the top of my power rankings. I think that they have the most important variables for a team to be successful. They have great leadership. I think high-end coaching to some extent. They're absolutely elite in the trenches. They invested in the secondary heavily, which is something we needed to see. And they have young players also. They have a great mix in the secondary. I love that addition of DJ Reader. Obviously, who wouldn't? They got a QB who knows how to execute. They got top-end talent at the skill positions with Amon-Ra, Laporta, Gibbs. I would definitely be considering futures for this team. But I think that it's hard for me to invest in the futures. I've said that a million times. I apologize for that. But I think that this team is all the pieces there. And the window is now. I think that this team is set up to win.
Yeah, I'm that Heat saying they're about to sign Tim Patrick. Dale said Donovan Peoples-Jones got cut. Birdie letting us know that. Harold Williams' prediction is that the Lions go 12-5. That over 10.5 wins is mighty appealing at minus 130. And honestly, to win the NFC, you might want your pocket at 550. I don't know if that's high enough, to have in your pocket. I think it's a fair number. Harold Williams looking at over 10.5. D. Jenkins says Hutchinson Defensive Player of the Year has to be value. This has become a sweetheart team. Of all the losing, first division title in 30 years, their
fans are electric. It's just everything about this Lions team is just such a feel-good team.
People love them. Honolulu Blue, baby.
Yeah,
people love them. Okay, and Brady says I think it is the best it will ever be. This number at plus 550 to win the NFC. Yeah, they're just. And D. Jenkins has agreed to me. This is America's team now. I love Detroit. You guys know that I love Detroit. I love going down to Detroit. You have immediate compassion for the people. You know, imagine you're paying your mortgage for 19 years and then they tell you your house is worthless. Some specials happening in that city, in that downtown core. It's kind of booming, and they're a really easy team to love. And I'm interested in but also it's very easy to romanticize this Detroit Lions squad. I don't want you can get so carried away with that in future betting, but I'm interested. Let's roll on. Next up for us is the Green Bay Packers, 9-8, 18-1 to win the Super Bowl, 8-1 to win the NFC, 2-1 to win the division. 9.5 is the win total, juiced to the over at -145, -170 to make the playoffs. Matt LaFleur, Coach of the Year at 10-1, and Jordan Love, MVP at 14-1. Jordan Love's first year at the helm was pretty special. So special that he got a 4-year, $220 million contract extension. That includes a $75 million signing bonus. $75 million signing bonus. Good God. And $155 million guaranteed. He threw for 4,159 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. And the final 8 games of the season, he was the best quarterback in the league. He threw for 2,150 yards in those 8 games, 18 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And he had 112.7 passer rating. In the wildcard win in Dallas, he was perfect. 272 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, a 157.2 rating. They have a very young, talented wide receiver room. 6 draft picks from 2022 and 23. Reed, Wicks, Watson, Dubs, Toure, DeBose. They have 2 tight ends coming in off excellent rookie seasons in Musgrave and Kraft. Aaron Jones is out in his place. 2022 rushing leader Josh Jacobs. They've let go of hoping that David Bakhtiari would be able to play in the important games of the year. He's gone. John Runyon. So they lose Bakhtiari and John Runyon, but they're strong in the offensive line. Rasheed Walker at left tackle, Alden Jenkins at left guard, Josh Myers at center, Sean Ryan at right guard, and Zach Tom at right tackle. And the notes coming out about Zach Tom right now is that he's just a monster. They drafted Jordan Morgan, 25th overall out of Arizona. Out Joe Barry. In is Boston College's Ben Hafley as the new defensive coordinator. His 3-time Pro Bowler Kenny Clark. Got Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, 2023 first rounder Lucas Van Ness up front. They spent a 2nd-round pick on linebacker Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M. He was a 3rd-round pick on Tyron Hopper out of Missouri. They signed Xavier McKinney to a 4-year, $68 million contract. They drafted 3 other safeties, Javon Bullard. They also got Oregon's Evan Williams, Oregon State's Keaton Oladapo. Jair Alexander did not look good last year. I don't put too much faith in him moving forward. Birdie says Green Bay hype is all potential. Says I need to see it first. He says I prefer the Vikings to second choice in the division. Love Pop when Jones got healthy, so they cut Jones. Take it away for us here. A fascinating team to break down with a ton of young talent. Green Bay Packers, Troy.
Birdie's comment kind of encapsulates how I feel about the team. I think they're highly volatile. They could be a Super Bowl contender or a non-playoff team. I really think that that's the range of this team with where they currently are. With Jordan Love, is he the guy? What kind of quarterback is he going to be after having such a great season? This whole team just outperformed last season. They had a great run. How are they going to look early in the season? It's going to be really interesting to see what type of quarterback, where's the head at for Jordan Love early in the season. So I'm going to be watching him very closely because there's so much hype surrounding him right now. They think that he's the answer, that they're basically thinking, he's going to be dominant in the NFC for years to come. And there's really been nobody to take the reign in the NFC. So maybe he is the guy. I struggle to see it with this offensive line. I know that they have some turnover. They lost Bakhtiari, how long have those guys, Bakhtiari and Runyon, been how efficient was that offensive line under those guys for years? Now they're going to be depending on a lot of young players, they're shuffling around. I know that there's a lot of talent in the wide receiver room, but I don't know. I just don't think that there's top-end talent in that wide receiver room. There's a lot of depth there at the same time. And on the defensive side of things, they have what it takes on the defensive front. They have what it takes on the defensive backfield. I like their defense, the way it's set up. They're kind of an older group to some extent, but I think that this Packers team has a massive range of potential outcomes, and we'll narrow that down from week to week. But right now, I don't feel comfortable moving on or against. Actually, I'm moving against them in week 1, really a lot because of the line movement. But yeah, I don't think that this is a team I'm going to be moving on in the future market.
I mean, I think they're going to win over 9.5 games. And it's juiced, and again, you kind of prefer to have a local with credit for a future bet that's minus 145. But let's roll on. The Minnesota Vikings, 7-10, 80-1 to win the Super Bowl, 40-1 to win the NFC, plus 950 to win the division. Their wins are at 6.5, overs minus 160 to make the playoffs, 3-1. Dallas Turner, defensive rookie of the year, just 4-1. Justin Jefferson, offensive player of the year, 10-1. And they have the worst regular season record, 10-1. J.J. McCarthy done for the year with a torn meniscus. Sam Darnold to start at quarterback. I'm surprised, Harold Williams saying Vikings 8-9. I am surprised that, Birdie saying I prefer the Vikings as a second choice in this division. I'm interested in talking this one out. It's hard to have high hopes with Darnold at quarterback. We know what he is. He's 21-35 in his career as a starter. But he has weapons: Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, wide receiver, Hawkinson at tight end. Aaron Jones comes over from the Packers. That's an upgrade for a running back. Do you know that this team, they had 7 rushing touchdowns last season? I mean, that is just horrific. Offensive line led by Christian Darrisaw and left tackle, right tackle Brian O'Neill. Brian Flores in his second year as defensive coordinator, he did an excellent job last year. Daniil Hunter and DJ Wanham are out. Jonathan Greenard comes in from the Texans, and Andrew Van Ginkel comes in from the Dolphins. And Van Ginkel and Flores have a great relationship. He's very excited to have him. They used their 17th overall pick on Alabama's SEC co-defensive player of the year linebacker Dallas Turner. As I said, 4-1 to win defensive rookie of the year. I mean, those are low numbers. Blake Cashman comes over from Houston. The front of this defense is weak. It's so weak to me. And look, I know that they have some potential with some skilled linebackers, but good God, Jerry Tillery, Harrison Phillips, Jonathan Bullard, is that putting any fear in the opposition? The secondary is not a strength. Shaquille Griffin, 4 teams in a little over a year. I don't know why anyone would have confidence in him. Byron Murphy controls the slot. Safety, you have Harrison Smith. I mean, what you got? He's just a gamer. 13th season. Cameron Bynum, Josh Metellus. I think this team is going to be so bad, but I might be way off with some thoughts from Harold Williams and Birdie. So take it away, Troy, the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, reading some of the people in the chat and their sentiment towards this team, it's definitely making me rethink things, because this is exactly pretty much a copy and paste of what I had on this defense last year. And somehow they were able to compete. They were able to make high impact plays, and the defense vastly outperformed their, not only the grades that they were given, but the expectations from the general public. I mean, this team was super impressive, and all the credit in the world to Brian Flores, who incorporated the polarizing defense with just they want to play high variance ball, right? Because the defense was bad. So how do you mask bad defense? You blitz. You try to shake things up, and that's exactly what he did, and he was very successful with it. Actually, Kevin O'Connell is another coach I believe in. So from a coaching standpoint, this team is where I want him to be. But then the roster is nowhere near what you would want to be, looking at if you're trying to back this team in the futures market, in my opinion. I think that they do have some upside to their offensive line. They're very good at tackle position. That's very important. They have great skill players. You got Sam Darnold, who is a sad excuse for a starting NFL quarterback, but it's who they got right now. This team could outperform expectations. I could see it, but it's not something I'm going to be investing in.
I think that plus 130 for under 6.5 is
really
I
get it.
But I'm going to have to take another look at this because Birdie says Vikings are better at running back, wide receiver, and when Hawk gets back, elite tight end, much better O-line than Green Bay in his opinion. They did great work in the offseason on that defense. The secondary is worrisome. And Harold Williams says over 6 wins easy in my opinion. So this is the reason why I had to do this show.
Yeah.
It's because my futures were bad last year and we didn't have this show. And I want to sit with all this here. I understand when you move on futures this late in the game that you're going to lose a lot of the value, but I do not see what others see with this Minnesota Vikings team. I think they're going to be really bad. Let's talk about the Chicago Bears. 7-10 last year, 30-1 to win the Super Bowl, 14-1 to win the AFC, plus 330 to win the division. Wins it's at 9.5 or 8.5. If you get the 8.5, it's heavily juiced to the over. If you get the 9.5, it's heavily juiced to the under. At 9.5, the under's minus 155 to make the playoffs. Minus 115, basically a pick 'em. Caleb Williams, offensive rookie of the year, down to plus 120. And Matt Eberflus, coach of the year at 10-1. I don't think there's any chance of that, man. The Bears drafted 2022 Heisman winner USC's Caleb Williams first overall and have very high hopes this year. He's got weapons. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, first round pick Rome Odunze. They have DeAndre Swift, 3-year, $24 million deal. They signed tight end Gerald Everett. They have Cole Kmet, of course, so Everett would back up Kmet. The offensive line looks strong. Braxton Jones at left tackle, Tevin Jenkins at left guard, right guard Nate Davis, right tackle Darnell Wright. And then they traded for Ryan Bates at center, and they signed Coleman Shelton in free agency. Their offense will be run by new offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. He served the same position in the last 3 years for the Seahawks. Their defense, when they brought in Montez Sweat, I mean, the change was drastic. Their run defense was 18th going into week 5 and was the number 1 run defense in the league at the end of the year. At linebacker, TJ Edwards, all over the field, 155 tackles. Good God. 2.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries. Tremaine Edmonds, 113 tackles, 4 interceptions. Secondary is very strong, and we saw it just get better and better and better. They had some health issues, injury issues in the first half of the season when they got healthier, but Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, Kyler Gordon, safeties Jaquan Brisker, and now Kevin Byard comes over. I mean, can he stay healthy for a whole season? Take it away, Troy. Your Chicago Bears.
Well, I wouldn't put this team in the same category as the Chicago Cubs, but there is my dad is an armchair quarterback. He loves Chicago, he loves Chicago teams, Bears, Cubs, Bulls. So I was very, I spent a lot of time on this team. Leading up to the draft, I was not excited about Caleb Williams. I thought he was cocky. I thought he was unproven in big situations. There's so many question marks that I had. I started to come around as I've watched film and I've seen, some people of high caliber that I think are very, very important to listen to their opinions. And they thought the hype was legitimate, that he has all the tools to be one of the best quarterbacks in the friggin' NFL. Then I watched the first episode of Hard Knocks and I completely backpedaled. Looking at Caleb's attitude when he talked on the phone with Eberflus, it was embarrassing. I thought he came out very cocky, very condescending. And then I just kept seeing cuts of Eberflus coaching him up. When I see Eberflus, defensive-minded head coach, stepping in and talking about basically the balance and how his weight distribution was in the pocket, I was completely thrown off. I was out. I basically sold the bag. I was like, these Bears are going to be the same old Bears. Don't get your hopes up. And then the preseason came around and we watched Caleb play ball, and he's everything that the scouts said he would be, at least in the preseason. Can he replicate that in the regular season? I don't know. But based on how PFF is currently grading this team, it's hard not to see value. I know we're looking at 4.5 points in week 1, but that's the Tennessee Titans. We'll see how it develops from here. But this defensive line, PFF got him at 27th. I think it's underrated. You got Sweat, Javon Dexter, Zach Pickens. You got rookie Booker, who stepped up big time. Problem is, you talked about how they defended the run, and they've proven on big downs that they can get off the field. And I still think they're a little bit inconsistent. They still had a little bit of a struggle getting off of blocks. I personally thought that they could have been much better against the run. That's one of my concerns that I have. The linebacker group is great in coverage and in the run game. They're great leaders. I think they're going to have all their defensive, players aligned properly, especially when you're looking at this young secondary who's morbidly underrated, in my opinion. 19th per PFF, Jalen Johnson and Byard, who are all pro caliber. I tend to believe Shaquan Brisker's, if he can stay healthy, he's all pro caliber. Kyler Gordon, another guy who I think could potentially has massive upside. I think 19th is simply inaccurate. This defense is undervalued. But obviously, right now where they're currently sitting in the futures market, I don't think there is a lot of value on this team. To be very transparent, me and my father did put $1,000 free bet. We signed up at a sports book together, split $1,000, put it on the Bears to win the division, plus 300. Other than that, we'll be going week to week with this team. But I'll tell you something. After looking and watching Chicago Bear football for years, we've never seen anything like this with all the talent we have on the offensive side of the ball. An offensive line who I think has a lot of upside, and if they could stay healthy, can be, top middle of the NFL. With Eberflus, I can't get over him, but I believe this Bears team has some pieces. We'll see how it develops.
There's no doubt that they have pieces.
Yeah.
I don't like Eberflus, but
I hate him. I can't stand him. I mean, he's just so dry. Like when he's giving his rah-rah speeches, it's just so underwhelming, and everyone kind of looks around at each other. It's super awkward and embarrassing.
It's good for Chicago that the Bears have this excitement. It's good for the league, and it's going to be this division is so much fun to cap. The NFC North is just a joy, and hopefully we get paid in full when we break it all down. I don't find anything appealing in the futures market with the Bears. I really want to watch them here, but I can understand Chicago fans being very excited about their team. Let's move on to the NFC South. We have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 9-8, 66-1 to win the Super Bowl, and 33-1 to win the NFC. I hate those numbers because I had the 49ers at 33-1 to win the NFC and 66-1 to win the Super Bowl when they lost to the Rams. And it was like, life-changing cash, man. Life-changing. Probably shouldn't say that, but it was a lot of money, and I hate seeing 33-1, 66-1. Just brings me back to horror show. 325 to win the division. 7.5 is the win total. Over is at -145. To make the playoffs, the Tampa Bay Bucks are plus 150. This is the third straight NFC South champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers that are plus 150 to make the playoffs. Baker Mayfield surprised a lot of people. Surprised me. 4,044 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and gets a 3-year contract worth $115 million. Wow. So Liam Cohen comes over from the Rams to be the new offensive coordinator. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin return. They have depth at that position. They have Trey Palmer, who is capable of stepping up. And then they draft Jalen McMillan out of Washington. Cade Otton returns at tight end. Rashad White, he was way better than I thought he was capable of. 272 carries for 990 yards, 6 touchdowns. Caught 64 passes for 549 yards and 3 touchdowns. Very, very impressive. Sky Dragon says Tampa Bay is a proven commodity in that division. My pick to win it. They drafted Oregon Duck Bucky Irving to back up Rashad White. They have Tristan Wirfs, all-pro tackle. They drafted Graham Barton in the 26th overall pick to play center out of Duke. The offensive line is talented and has depth. Todd Bowles begins his 6th year with this defense. Levante David and Antoine Winfield are back. Jamal Dean returns. Jordan Whitehead's back after spending 2 years with the Jets. Vita Vea, we know what he does. He clogs up that middle. Now, they need more from play. There's a bunch of players they need a ton more from, and Joe Tryon Shoyinka is the main one, and they need so much more from him. He's very highly thought of coming into the league. He's just not delivered. They drafted Chris Roswell in the 2nd round. They signed Randy Gregory to a 1-year contract to replace Shaq Barrett. They let Devin White walk, and they didn't make many or any significant outside additions at linebacker. Carlton Davis was traded to the Detroit Lions. I was surprised that they let Devin White walk and didn't really do anything to fix that. Here we go. Birdie says Bucks to win the division is in play again. Undervalued again. Same breakdowns by all the guys I follow. So much disrespect again for Todd Bowles. Take it away for us here, Troy, the Buccaneers.
Yeah, let me get my place back on my sheet here. Yeah, the Buccaneers, I kind of agree with Sky Dragon in the chat. DG's making some good points talking about the Bucks and how he likes them to win the division. Plus 300 looks like a pretty good number. The thing that kept me off it is seeing that the Saints had plus 325. That kind of kept me a little bit farther removed from it. But I think Liam Cohen is another coach with ties back to the Shanahan or McVay trees that we see all these coaches being hired. And I think it's a great hire. And I mainly look back to how impressive he was at Kentucky. I thought what he did with that offense and the turnover was amazing. The quarterback situation with Baker, he's proven that I believe in Baker. He's the example of a gamer, right? He makes the right decisions. He's very good against the blitz. And I think this performance helped the Bucs offensive line out in a tremendous way. They were top 10 in pass block win rate in 2023. It was an outlier season. Can he repeat? Not sure. I do think that the defense is a little bit underrated based on the veteran presence they do have. Elijah Cansey definitely has to step up. Levante Davis, he's getting a little old, but he's had a down year. But I believe that this team could win this division. And if I had to put money on anybody in this division, this is one I'd feel more comfortable with.
Yeah. I mean, there's no point to make the playoffs at plus 150. I mean, they got to win the division to get into the playoffs, and that's a pretty nice number at plus 325. Wins over 7.5.
What's the juice on the 7.5?
Heavily juiced to the over, minus 145.
Yeah.
You could bet the 8.5. You could bet the 8.5 at plus money to the over. You know, I like the alt. It does not make sense to be putting in futures at anything over minus 130 at all. So DG says he's got Houston plus 180, Green Bay plus 275, and Tampa Bay plus 300 division parlay from like mid-March here. Let's roll on. Next up for us, we of course are staying in the NFC South. So we have the New Orleans Saints 9-8 last year, 80-1 to win the Super Bowl, 35-1 to win the NFC, plus 350 to win the division. They are also at 7.5 wins, not quite as juiced to the over at minus 130 and plus 170 to make the playoffs. They fired offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael. It was probably tough for them to do, being with the team since 2006. Only one offensive assistant coach was retained after last season. Gary Kubiak's son Clint takes over as offensive coordinator. Derek Carr's stats weren't as bad as I thought, and he closed the season really strong. I was surprised when I was going over his statistics. Because he's not a good quarterback, and pretty decent numbers: 3,878 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. This also surprised. It was the third highest quarterback rating of his career. And he closed strong, 14-2 touchdown interception over the last 5 games when the Saints went 4-1. Chris Olave is a dangerous weapon, coming off a second straight 1,000-yard season. Rashid Shaheed blossomed, very good deep threat, the kick return, punt return, very dangerous. This rushing attack was horrific. I mean, is Kamara just done? I mean, so Kamara, Jamal Williams, and Kundra Miller, the 3 of them did not have one run over 20 yards in the entire season. Not one of them. The offensive line was a mess. Ryan Ramczyk, I mean, his knees just won't let him play, so he's not going to play this year. Starting left guard James Hurst retired. So 2 starters from the 2023 offensive line remain: Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz. Now they first round pick out of Oregon State, Fuaga. He's been taking first team snaps at left tackle. Trevor Penning, a 2022 first round draft choice, was hurt most of his rookie season. He lost that starting tackle job after 5 games last season. He's taking first team snaps at right tackle. This is not a good football team. The Saints defense was strong last year, despite not being able to get enough pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Just 34 sacks. That's it. Their run defense took a step backwards. So what are we saying? So this football team, you have Cameron Jordan, 35 at defensive end. Demario Davis, 35 at linebacker. Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, 32.
Their best players. This is their best. This is their best players on defense, right?
Yeah, and that's how old they are. Then they signed Chase Young. Look, we know who Chase Young really is. This is a bad football team. I'm not entirely sure. I guess under 7.5 wins. I guess
yeah.
Take it away, Troy.
Yeah, I think under 7.5 wins it would be a future audit. I'm very interested in. Maybe I even do move on that. Maybe I move on worst record in the NFL. Can't you see this team being absolutely horrendous on offense with the worst, in my opinion, on paper right now, clearly the worst offensive line? I think Derek Carr, he's another guy like Dak Prescott that might fool you from time to time, but he always plays to his average, which is a little bit below average. He doesn't have any talent really surrounding him. Olave is a top 5 receiver in the NFL, unfortunately stuck with this offensive line and Derek Carr. The defense, obviously, like we were talking about, I mean, there is some upside there. It's a lot of veteran presence, but they're getting old. They can't rush the passer. They can't get pressure. The defensive back unit, the secondary, is actually probably the best unit on this team. But, man, I think that the lack of depth on the defense is pretty concerning. The offense is probably the worst offense in the league, in my opinion. A couple of injuries, one or two things. I think that this team could have the worst record in the NFL. What's the odds on that?
Yeah, I didn't even include it. It's funny because but I'll pull it up right now. But it wasn't. I didn't include it. Let's get the worst regular season record. The Saints are 18-1.
18-1.
There are 9 teams lower than them.
That might be, I'll have to consider that. I'm going to make a note. But this is, I think that this could be one of the worst teams in the NFL, 18-1. What is the Patriots for?
Plus 320.
Plus 320. Right? I think one or two things fall the wrong way for this team. And they might throw in the towel, man, especially with how old they are.
Preston knows his team. It's his team. He knows them inside and out. He has 40-1 to have the least amount of points in the NFL. So let's get Rattler in there.
Damn, that's also a good way to attack it. Focus on the offense, where it's pretty clear to me. I mean, last year, what were they? They had to be bottom 5.
Wow. And this is the type of team that will give up. Get the first overall pick and change the direction of the franchise.
They got and right out the gate, like, we're not going to be able to hop on this because they got Carolina, which I might be on Carolina money line, to be honest, because of line movement alone. But Dallas, they got Dallas, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Kansas City. They could very well be Tampa Bay. I could see them being 1-5 after week 6.
Wow, that's a very, very interesting angle that I look forward to thinking about over the next week. Let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons, 7-10. Super Bowl at 25-1, NFC at 12-1, minus 130 to win the division. A win total at 9.5, juice to the over. Make the playoffs at minus 210. Kirk Cousins to be comeback player of the year at 5-1. Raheem Norris to be coach of the year at 12-1, and Bijan Robinson offensive player of the year at 16-1. I was listening to the radio driving today, and the host said that it was a Canadian show up here, and the host said that when Desmond Ridder was waived yesterday or today by the Cardinals, so Desmond Ridder, he couldn't beat out Clayton Tune, and the host said, I immediately wanted to bet the Falcons win total over. Just imagine that they won 7 games last year with Desmond Ridder at quarterback. Imagine what they could do with a legitimate quarterback. That's how bad Ridder is, that he can't beat out Clayton Tune to win a backup job. And this Falcons team won 7 games last year. Now, I know there's a lot of people high on the Falcons already. And this team comes in with a lot of hope. a lot of hope. Kirk Cousins, the Penix draft is, look, you give Cousins a 4-year contract and then you draft Penix, it's confusing. Arthur Smith was replaced by Raheem Morris, Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator from the Rams. And, Rams passing game coordinator Zach Robinson comes aboard as the team's new offensive coordinator. Kirk Cousins has weapons, wide receiver Drake London and tight end Kyle Pitts. And then they've got some depth at wide receiver. Darnell Mooney comes in from the Bears. Arizona Cardinal Rondale Moore comes in. And Ray McLeod comes in. They have an excellent running back room. I mean, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, they're very good. Robinson ran 214 times for 976 yards, caught 58 passes for 487 yards. The offensive line returns all 5 of its starters. Jake Matthews at left tackle, Matthew Bergeron at left guard, Drew Dahlman at center, Chris Lindstrom at right guard, Caleb McGarry at right tackle. Jimmy Lake takes over as the new defensive coordinator. Raheem Morris and Jimmy Lake are, tight. And they made that big splash by picking up star linebacker Matthew Judon. So you have Grady Jarrett and David Onyemata. You have outside linebacker Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State, coming into his own. You have AJ Terrell, Justin Simmons, Jesse Bates in the secondary. It's a good football team. Take it away, Troy. Falcons.
I agree. It's just I just feel like there's so much hype around this team, but I feel like the hype is kind of warranted at this point. This is one of the best offensive lines in the league. They're top 10 in both run block and pass block. I feel like the grades will improve on the offensive line with Kirk in the pocket instead of, some freaking cones. All 5 of the starting linemen return. I feel like this is going to be one of the most cohesive offensive lines in the league. Now they got a Kirk in the pocket. I think that's going to be pretty impressive. I like what they did by drafting. I personally believe Penix was definitely a round 1 grade. I think he was top 15 for sure. So I don't mind that draft pick. I know there's a lot of scrutiny around that pick, but you look at this defense, I feel like that's where you have to figure out what's going to happen with this defense. I feel like the defensive backfield is the secondary is probably their strongest group. Jesse Bates and AJ Terrell, 2 guys I'm extremely high on. Playmakers, nose for a ball, knows how to create turnovers, both of them. High IQ, not Bates as much, but he's a wild card. I like this team, to be honest, and I think the hype is warranted, but it's just hard for me to. There's just so much hype surrounding this team that it just looks too easy, and when it looks too easy, you should probably be looking the other way.
We're late to the party.
Way late.
There's no doubt about that.
What's the defense going to be like? That's my question. Is what do we expect out of this team?
With Raheem Norris, Jimmy Lake, it's going to be really strong. It's just going to get better and better with those 2 guys running. I mean, that's what they do. I have a lot of faith in those 2 guys. So maybe the personnel isn't at a level that they want it to be, but
you're right. There's a lot of upside here, man. There's a lot of upside here.
Okay. Minus 130 to win the division. I know that it was either Birdie or Skydern got in on the Falcons win division early. I'd love to hear what line they got because I know that's moved heavily in their direction. Lil Domo in the house. Great to see you. Let's roll on to the Carolina Panthers. 2-15. Super Bowl plus 25,000. 250 to 1 to win the NFC plus 12,500, 125 to 1 to win the division, 11 to 1. Win total at 5.5. Over is minus 130 to make the playoffs plus 550 and have the worst regular season record is plus 700. After an ugly 2-15 season, there were wholesale changes in Carolina. It's pretty wild. They didn't call a play with the lead in the 4th quarter all season. I mean, that's a pretty wild stat. Their 2 wins came on last-second field goals. Dave Canales, Tampa Bay's offensive coordinator a year ago, comes in, new coach, new general manager, and Dan Morgan. Of course, he's former Panthers linebacker. Bryce Young comes in after a rough first season in the NFL. He threw for 2,877 yards, 11 touchdowns, 10 picks, and he was sacked 62 times. Bryce Young comes in beaten and wounded, but Robert Hunt comes in to protect him. $100 million. That's what Robert Hunt got signed from the Dolphins. Then they signed Damian Lewis to a $53 million deal. They trade for Deontay Johnson. They've got Adam Thielen, who, is a nice slot security blanket. And if Deontay Johnson wants to prove a lot of people wrong, he could step up and be a WR1. Chuba Hubbard, RB1. He's playing ahead of Miles Sanders. That Sanders signing was atrocious. They draft running back Jonathan Brooks out of Texas in the second round. And all the offensive coaches were let go at the end of the year. But Canales retained the defensive coaches. They don't have Brian Burns anymore on the edge. And I do not. Jadeveon Clowney and DJ Wonnum. I kind of like Wonnum better than Clowney, honestly, right now. But defensive tackle Derek Brown was extended 4 years, $96 million. Luvu, they lose to Washington Commanders, but they replace him with Josie Jewell. I think that was not a bad signing. And Shaq Thompson, we didn't get to see him last year. This is the quarterback of the defense. I really like him. I guess that kind of messes with your capping when you like a player. And can J.C. Horn stay healthy? There's some okay pieces in this football team. Too bad the owner is such an ass clown that's so easy to despise. Take it away for us here, Troy, the Carolina Panthers.
I think there's a lot of things to like with this Panthers team and what they did. First of all, by investing in their offensive line, I love that. There's so many voids that this offense needs to fill. At least they really focused on hammering the most important unit on the field, which is their offensive line. But the biggest thing to me that I noticed when I'm looking at this team and the profile for them is Dave Canales. One of the rare coaches that's not from the Shanahan or McVay branch, that's one of the best project managers in the NFL. This man coached Geno Smith in Seattle and turned the Seattle Seahawks into a winning team with Geno Smith, who was left for dead basically before Canales. And then he took Baker Mayfield, and they go into the playoffs and turn Tampa Bay into a team that way overperformed. And I think that it's probably a perfect guy to put in the head coach position for this team with the young quarterback. I mean, I know he can't really see over his offensive line, but at least this time the offensive line will be blocking. But who's he going to throw it to? Didn't this team lead the league in drops last year? I know that Jonathan Mingo, I was reading some reports from the beat writers. He's supposedly washed and nowhere near the same level of talent he used to be, which is concerning. Obviously, Thielen and Deontay Johnson. If you look at some of the advanced metrics, Deontay Johnson's a stud. The man creates separation. He's open. But I still think that the positional groups is pretty lackluster. Chuba Hubbard is probably going to get replaced by the rookie sometime throughout the season. I think that rookie's going to be a really good player. And the upside on defense, I mean, Clowney, Derek Brown, there's a couple pieces. I just like this defense. Something about it. I don't know. Like you said, Shaq, there's just so many pieces that I like. J.C. Horn, if he could stay healthy, Xavier Woods, Jordan Fuller. I feel like there's a lot of things I like about the defense. I feel like there's going to be a lot of opportunities to back this Panthers team, and I might be on them in week 1.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities to back them. I don't think that you need to take the over 5.5 wins or anything like that. I think you'll just find opportunities to back them throughout the season.
I'm going right now to bet week 1 Panthers. Week 1 Panthers. This line came down from 5 to 4.5. It's on its way to 4. I'm grabbing it now.
Yeah, I find it appealing. As well. Well, that is the NFC South. Not a fun division to talk about. Let's finish off with our final division, the NFC West. Shout out to Brad Oliver in the house. Great to see all you guys. I'm that Heat. Great to see all you guys rocking with us. Bankroll Blitz Season 2. Start with the San Francisco 49ers, 12-5 last year, plus 550 to win the Super Bowl, plus 240 to win the NFC. I had no futures on them last year. I don't want futures on them at this number this year. I don't find that appealing. Minus 210 to win the division. Their win totals at 11.5. That's juiced to the under at minus 130. Make the playoffs minus 450. Best regular season record 5-1. Christian McCaffrey, offensive player of the year at 7-1. Nick Bosa, defensive player of the year at 850 plus 850, 8.5 to 1. And Brock Purdy, MVP at 16-1. So we know what happens when you lose a Super Bowl. Only 3 of the first 56 teams that have lost a Super Bowl have returned to win the next season. The 49ers have made 4 NFC finals and 2 Super Bowls over the last 5 years. And the way they've lost has just been horrific to watch. They became the 7th team to lose a Super Bowl after having a double-digit lead. That was after becoming the 4th team to lose a 10-point fourth quarter lead in the conference title game in 2022. Of course, that's when I had the 33-1, 66-1. In February 2020, when they lost in that Super Bowl, they became the 3rd team in league history to squander a double-digit fourth quarter lead in the Super Bowl. They had 9 Pro Bowlers last season, and all are returning. They're returning all 11 Super Bowl starters from their offense, 2nd in the NFL in yards gained, 3rd in points scored. Now, of course, we're going to be talking about what's going on with Trent Williams and what's going on with Brandon Ayuk. We'll talk about that in a second. But last year, Purdy became the franchise's first Pro Bowl quarterback since 2002. Purdy, this game manager, set the 49ers single-season record for passing yards and had the 14th highest passer rating in NFL history. They became the first team in NFL history to have a running back, a tight end, and 2 wide receivers all gain at least 1,000 yards from scrimmage. McCaffrey won NFL Offensive Player of the Year. He led the league in yards from scrimmage. First 49ers to lead the NFL in rushing since Joe Perry in 1954. Scored the 2nd most touchdowns in franchise history. And they bring in Florida wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. But there are problems. So we're less than 2 weeks until the start of the season. And Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk, let's start with Williams. Trent Williams was injured in week 6 last year, and he missed week 7 and 8. The 49ers lost all those games, and they averaged 17 points per game without Trent Williams there. Ayuk traveled with the team to that preseason finale in Las Vegas. So, we're waiting. We're waiting to see what the hell's going to happen. Last year, the 49ers allowed 34 sacks. That's the 6th fewest in the league. They ranked 3rd in rushing yards per game. Trent Williams, a big part of that. So you have left guard Aaron Banks. You have center Jake Brendel, right guard John Feliciano, right tackle Colton McKivitz. And they picked up Dominic Pooney in the 3rd-round pick. The 49ers allowed the 3rd fewest points in the NFL, ranked 8th in yards allowed, and still they fired Steve Wilks. So Nick Sorensen comes in to replace Wilks. He was a former Rams defensive coordinator. And Brandon Staley comes in to assist him. And they have a lot of work to do. Now, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Travarius Ward, Hufanga. Now, Eric Armstead's not there. He wouldn't take the pay cut, so they bounced him. They bring in Malik Collins. They signed Leonard Floyd. They signed Devondre Campbell. Dre Greenlaw won't be ready for week 1 after suffering a torn Achilles in the Super Bowl. Troy, take it away. The San Francisco 49ers.
I just feel like it's pretty obvious where this team currently sits in this market. They're always going to be a threat with this caliber of defense and with Shanahan calling the plays. It's quite clear that whatever's wrong with the offensive line, I know without Trent Williams, they lost the games when he was out, but still at the same time, regardless if Trent Williams is there or not, Shanahan's going to be there to help relieve pressure. I think that this team is definitely going to be, back in the conversation of Super Bowl talk throughout the season. How long it's going to take them to get there? How long, will Ayuk and Trent Williams be holding out? When are they going to return? And then when they do, it's going to be a little bit of a ramp-up period for them to even get back to full speed. So, this 49ers team is definitely a legit contender. They have great personnel on the offense. Obviously Debo, Kittle, Ayuk, CMC. This is the best in class. And Shanahan brings it all together. How can you not like this 49ers team, to be honest? But at the same time, I'm fading the shit out of them week 1. So, we'll see what happens with Trent Williams. I hope they sit out. I hope they're not available in week 1, and I'll be a happy camper.
Yeah, we'll find out, man. We will find out. Let's move on to the Los Angeles Rams, 10-7, 30-1 to win the Super Bowl, 14-1 to win the NFC, plus 350 to win the division, win total at 8.5, and make the playoffs at minus 115. I find that making the playoffs very, very appealing. Jared Verse, Defensive Rookie of the Year, 10-1. So McVay enters his 8th season with the team as head coach. Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp. You got Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams. This is a very good team. Now, Aaron Donald, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, future Hall of Famer, retired. And, Jordan Fuller, gone. So, Raheem Morris, gone. Atlanta Falcons. The Rams agreed to the 3-year, $48 million contract to re-sign right guard Kevin Dotson. Les Snead also brings in Jonah Jackson, signs him to a 3-year, $51 million contract. And they have depth at receiver. Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell. Tyler Higbee is still recovering from the ACL, MCL tear that he suffered in the playoffs. And Chris Shula has been promoted to replace Raheem Morris. The Rams drafted pass rushers in the first 2 rounds, Jared Verse, and they bring in Fiske as Florida State running mate. So Kobe Turner, of course, defensive runner-up for Defensive Rookie of the Year last year, all-rookie outside linebacker Byron Young. They bring in Tre'Davious White to add to the secondary. That's Cameron Curl and Quentin Lake. Why wouldn't I be on them at minus 115 to make the playoffs? Great to see you, Marty Riggs, in the house. Marty Riggs running with us. Take it away, Troy. LA Rams.
I mean, I think that this team improved in a lot of senses improved that offensive line. McVay and Stafford, a dynamic duo. They got high-end talent at the skill positions. Puka Nacua, who I think is a Hall of Fame receiver, is just going to continue to bloom and dominate that number one receiver, number one target share. And for this team, I really believe that to be true. The loss of Aaron Donald is definitely something that gives me a lot of hesitation. I mean, this guy, Aaron Donald, required 3 offensive linemen, required the attention of more than one offensive player every single possession. That's how impactful he was. It's going to impact the defense at every single level. But then you look at what they did to replace him. I mean, they're really solid on the defensive line. I think the 2 draft picks that they made for the defensive line are going to be I feel like it's going to work out for them. Somehow it always works out for guys like McVay. And I think as long as you got McVay and Stafford as the tandem there, I believe that they're going to make the playoffs. I feel like that's a good bet, Jim. I really do. I think that they are live to win this division.
Yeah, I don't know if they can win the division, but McVay is just quality. And they have a lot of nice pieces. And that young secondary is getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
Brady says they're so dependent of Stafford to be healthy. They rolled all of next year's money into this for Stafford, so he's done after the season, most likely. He says, I worry about spots like this.
But he's so tough, though. I mean, he's proven like he ain't going to just sit out for especially if you're taking a win total over. I feel like they're definitely going to need to win football games to make the playoff. I don't know. I get the concern. The depth there is not good.
Let's roll on to the Seattle Seahawks, 9-8 last year, 66-1 to win the Super Bowl, 33-1 to win the NFC, plus 750 to win the division. Win total at 7.5, juice to the over at minus 145, plus 175 to make the playoffs. And Byron Murphy, Defensive Rookie of the Year, at 10-1. Mike McDonald arrives as the Seahawks' new coach after serving as the Ravens' defensive coordinator. God, 36 years old, Mike McDonald, head coach of the Seahawks. Ryan Grubb joins the staff, no offensive coordinator. He held the same position for 2 seasons for the Huskies. Geno Smith regressed a little bit last year, 3,624 yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions in 15 games. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Najigba. I mean, those are weapons. They also have Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. I mean, that's a beautiful running back duo. The offensive line took a major hit last year when Abe Lewis missed 11 games at right tackle. He had knee surgery in the offseason, and something's up with his recovery because he's not ready to go. He's not going to go. He might be out all year. They drafted UConn guard Christian Haynes in the 3rd round. They signed Nick Harris, Laken Tomlinson in the offseason. They bring in Leonard Williams at the trade deadline last year. They signed him to a 3-year, $64.5 million contract extension. They signed Jonathan Hankins in free agency. They used their 16th overall pick on Byron Murphy, who we talked about for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Boye Mafe led the Seahawks with 9 sacks. Darrell Taylor at 5.5. Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks gone in free agency, but they signed Jerome Baker from the Dolphins, Tyrell Dodson from the Bills. Their secondary led by last year's 5th overall pick cornerback Devon Witherspoon. He was a monster. Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs are gone, but Julian Love remains. Witherspoon, Love, and Reek Woolen. That's a hell of a secondary. I don't believe in Geno Smith. I can't wait to watch Mike McDonald and what he does with this defense. And what the transition from Pete Carroll to Mike McDonald. I'm very interested with the Seattle Seahawks. Take it away, Troy.
I wonder what it's going to look like. The new era in Seattle without Carroll is going to be definitely interesting to follow along. I mean, I was looking to fade this team all last year because it's the league's worst offensive line. And I actually think they might have gotten worse this year. Now, they do have top-end talent at the receiver position. Geno Smith has proven he has the ability to execute and get the job done and be average 9-8, whatever, 8-9, whatever they're destined to be pretty much every year at this point. The defense, that's kind of where, if you're going to invest in this team, you're definitely putting your eggs in that basket because the defense definitely has some pieces that you want to see. I love the addition of Dodson. Witherspoon's an absolute beast, but this offensive line is just pitiful, and I'll be looking to fade them in the right spots.
The Seattle Seahawks, we go into our final team, our 32nd team to break down here on episode 1 of season 2 of Bankroll Blitz with Troy Torrance. We talk about the Arizona Cardinals, 4-13 last year. They, to win the Super Bowl, are plus 10,000, 100 to 1, 50 to 1 to win the NFC, 12 to 1 to win the division. Win total at 6.5. Now that's heavily juiced to the over. 3 to 1 to make the playoffs. And Marvin Harrison Jr., Offensive Rookie of the Year out of Ohio State, at plus 650. Kyler Murray enters his 6th season completely recovered from the torn ACL. In his 8 games last year, he threw for 1,799 yards, 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, while running 44 times for 244 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jonathan Gannon and Drew Petzing think the best is yet to come from Kyler. But the offensive line needs to protect them. So last year's first-round pick, Paris Johnson, and free agent signing Jonah Williams from the Bengals are going to anchor this offensive line. And, of course, the most notable addition is their 4th overall pick, Marvin Harrison Jr., who will be paired up with Michael Wilson, Trey McBride at tight end. They have slot receiver Greg Dortch, a ton of speed. James Conner was a monster last year. I loved seeing it. And then they draft Trey Benson out of Florida State in the 3rd round. They signed 4 notable free agents, Justin Jones, defensive tackle, and Bilal Nichols, inside linebacker Mac Wilson Sr., and cornerback Sean Murphy Bunting. They draft defensive end Darius Robinson, 27th overall out of Missouri, but he's got a calf injury, and he's going to begin the season on the IR. That hurts him. In the 2nd round, they drafted cornerback Max Melton out of Rutgers. The defensive line is much stronger this year with the addition of Jones and Nichols. Linebacker Kaiser White returns alongside Mac Wilson, Dennis Gardeck, and B.J. Ojolari is expected to take a big step back. But, Zaven Collins, Dennis Gardeck, they're going to be battling for playing time. And then safety tandem, Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson. It's pretty special. Team 32 out of 32, Troy, the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah. The first thing I think about when I look at this game is I think about the bookies steaming the line towards the Cardinals against the Buffalo Bills in week 1. You see you have all these parlays like I talked about the very first game with the Bills. We see this steam heading towards the Cardinals, and I think that's kind of telling me that maybe the Cardinals are a little bit better than I thought. And reports out of camp, watching that steam made me do a little bit of digging because I did move on the Cardinals in week 1. Reports out of camp is that Kyler Murray's a kind of a different character this year, and he's fully bought in. He's the last to leave the facility. Years past, he was trying to bail out of the facility as fast as possible, get home and stream Call of Duty. I think that there might be a different look, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities. I love the addition of Marvin Harrison. This team has proven the ability to put up points on not only just any football team, but some of the best football teams. And I think that there's a lot of upside with this team, despite some of the PFF grades. I mean, across the board, D-line, linebacker, DBs, PFF got them at 32nd grades overall for the entire group. So it's definitely a kind of a lasso toss in the dark, but I do think that this team are positioned well for upward mobility. And I'm going to be backing them in week 1, and I'll be looking to back them more throughout the season.
Yeah, I'm interested in backing them. And they won me the Survivor Pool here at Pub Sports Radio.
That's right.
So I'm big fans of the Arizona Cardinals. And speaking of the Survivor Pool and the Cappers contest in business. Sign up now. We got really exciting news. Harbor Acres Cottages is sponsoring our contest. They're putting in 1,500 American, and that will be given out as bonuses for perfect weeks. If there's so there's $75 American up for a perfect week. If no one gets a perfect week, there'll be 150. And last year we had a 4-week run of no perfect weeks, which then would have had 300 American up for anyone to have a perfect week. So that's just bonus cash. We thank Harbor Acres Cottages, and we're going to be talking about them throughout the season. So that's a $1,500 bonus to the cash involved in the Cappers contest. And also this Friday we have a poker tournament at Bet Online. Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, $25 buy-in, $25 rebuy. And the winner gets entry into the Cappers contest. And we will have a live stream here hosted by Jose, myself, and others for the poker tournament. So we got a lot of fun coming up, And this was really enjoyable. It gives me so much. I love having all this time to think about all these things. And then I'm going to make some moves in the future market. And I'm going to try to make less than I did last year. Brady says got some buddies already in the Cappers contest. It's going to be fun. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to have the Cappers contest show as well on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, hosted by Jose and myself. And we're also going to have a $1,000 entry for the Circa Millions that we will be voting on, that the Pub Sports members will be voting on. So that'll be a lot of fun as well. Thank you all for being here with us. Blue Numbers, Coin, Al Cervix, Sky Dragon, Birdie. Thank you so much. Jared TG, Saturated. So great to see the guys back in action. Harold Williams. It's just so much fun. So much fun to be a part of this with you guys. And 7-2 start in the preseason for me. A half point away from being 8-1 in the preseason. I would like to take the month off and only do preseason full time and only bet on preseason. Basically, I hope to do that at some point in my career. I would sure love that opportunity to do it. There's just if $2,000 limits. I mean, I'm not affected. So I'm excited. I'm excited this year. I'm excited about the opportunity to cap with Troy Torrence. Last year, what you did was simply spectacular. A 9.15% ROI, up over just under 40 units on the season was absolutely spectacular. We have nothing without you guys. 66 Slammy, all of you, Ron Crawford, Londo. Just means so much that you guys support us. We have nothing without you guys. So truly, truly thank you. And thank you to our producer, Jose Bouquet, who works tirelessly behind the scenes. Juan Ruiz, great to see you, my man. Troy Torrence, my friend, I'm so excited to have the second season working with you. What are your last words for the Cappers supporting the show?
There's a reason I came back for season 2. The first thing is I have an incredible amount of respect for you, Jimmy. I think what you've done here and with this community, just an incredible amount of respect all around. Can't wait for this season. Can't wait to get started. Can't wait to see your action in week 1. I'm champing, whatever it is, at the bit. So very excited to get to it, brother. Let's stick with it.
Yeah, let's stick with it and get that cash. Thank you. Yes, Birdie. It wasn't the Capper contest you won, but it was our own contest for NFL Pub Hub, which we'll be so excited about having on Sundays once again this year. And just thank you all. So we are 9 days away from our Thursday night live stream on September 5th, game 1. And I just can't wait to get to work and to go to war. War is a bad example for people who actually fought in wars. I shouldn't say that. I'm trying to cut that out of my vocabulary, but just to put our lives on the line with our predictions is a better way of putting it. So thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Troy, my man, 9.15% ROI. Thank you all for supporting.
That's going to be very difficult to repeat. So set the bar high. Maybe not as high as Caleb Williams with the Bulls '90s theme song coming out. First episode of Hard Knocks comparing him to Michael Jordan. But come on, let's get 5%. I'll shoot for 5% ROI.
I can't wait. Thank you all so much for watching Bankroll Blitz. Let's have a giant season and get that cash.